We're east of the riverbed. And we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke.
You said like the tea from like the Afghans to brew for you?
Yeah. So we would always like, whenever we were with them, they would have like their own little tent, and they would always invite us in, and they would make us chai tea, but it was wherever they were getting it from. I don't know.
The Taliban? No.
Yeah, I don't know. But they always had like these tiny little glasses. It was like maybe a third of the size of this, maybe the same size around.
Yeah.
And then it would be like this much tea, and then they would dump like this much sugar into it. Oh yeah.
It was sweet.
Oh, super sweet. Like insanely sweet. And then they had like these little hard candies that they would drop into them as well, and it would give it different flavors. And then we would drink that with them all the time. It was kind of crazy.
Was it good though?
It was amazingly good.
Really?
That's why I love chai tea now, is because I had that. And then I come here and I drink chai tea, and it's like, it's
like
probably all the half a cup of diabetes that I was getting. It like rot my teeth right out of my head. It was good. It was so good though. And that was a big thing there, right? Is that like, have you ever heard the phrase like 3 cups of tea? Like when everybody would go there to like talk to elders and stuff like that, you would never gain an elder's trust until you had 3 cups of tea with them. So they were a big thing about like the social aspects of conversation.
It's like their culture.
Before getting down to business, right?
Yeah.
So you would have to meet with them and have cups of tea. And that was like a big thing in their culture, I guess. So
that's how you get the buy-in.
Yeah, it was basically.
You want to talk business, y'all? You better have
you better have some of this tea first. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and that's where that was the first time I'd ever had chai tea. Was there, so I appreciate this.
Were you skeptical at first? Like, man, I don't know if I should drink this shit.
No. So A&A came in like 2 varieties: really, really bad and really, really good. And we went through a couple different groups of A&A with us. And the group that we had near the end was really good. Like we lived with them for at like the section level a week at a time in our little like vehicle checkpoints that we built across Afghanistan, because we were on like this huge kick to dig a tank ditch like across Panjway to stop people from moving freely, and they had to come through these checkpoints. So like every week you would rotate out of these checkpoints, and that's basically all we did near the end of the tour. And you'd go there as a section with a section of A&A.
Did they keep the platoons like ethically together or ethnically together? Like, all these people are from like this tribe or like this kind of ethnicity in Afghanistan, so they're gonna be in a unit together.
I don't know, man. There was I don't know. We interacted with them as much as we needed to, really, and they stayed to themselves a lot too, mostly because they smoked a lot of hash and stuff like that. It's their culture, right? Mm-hmm. We were too busy actually working a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But when push came to shove, like these guys were like ready to fight though. Like some of them ran away a lot. Some of them would be like, "Oh, I have to go away," and then they'd never come back. And it'd be stuff like, or they'd steal stuff, and there was lots of stuff like that. We did have people come in that were like, I don't want to say spies, but they were spies.
Mm-hmm, essentially.
Yeah. Like, we had an interpreter that we called Taliban Mike, because he was literally working for the Taliban, and we caught him.
How'd you catch him?
So we were going to go on a patrol, and before we left on a patrol, they said, we got a call from our mute call sign, which is like our electronic warfare.
Okay.
And they said that they were intercepting ICOM traffic, which is like their little walkie-talkies that they use there. They were intercepting ICOM traffic from our compound, and our SOPs were always like, our interpreters, we would give them a radio as we were leaving and then take it back from them when we got back. So we had all the radios. They didn't have anything. They weren't allowed to have radios, cell phones, anything
like that. It was like a control measure.
Exactly, right? Because like our security was our first priority, right? Everybody's got to stay safe. And they told us that there was ICOM traffic coming from our compound, so we searched the guys, and we found a guy with a radio and a cell phone and stuff like that, and he had pictures of, I guess it was like, I can't remember all of the details specifically, like a long time ago now. Mm-hmm. But it was like his brother or his cousin or something like that with like, I can't remember if it was like a suicide vest or he was like with bomb making material or something like that, and he had pictures of it on his cell phone. Yeah, he was like, "Oh, Taliban Mike."
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I guess he was like sending out information because our interpreters were usually not with us during orders, but like they would be waiting for us. And this guy was like waiting pretty close. So I guess he was like overhearing our orders for the patrol and then was relaying that before we actually stepped off so that whoever could go and do whatever.
Could go prepare.
Yeah, or whatever their plan was. And then he would hide his radio again in their accommodations, which we kind of like left them to their own, right? Like their space was their space, our space was our space. And we trusted some of them more than others. We actually got a couple of our interpreters back to Canada.
That's awesome.
Because that was like a big program that we did there, right? It's like, I can't remember, there was like a certain amount of time that they had to give to service, if you want to call it that, helping us as language interpreters. And then they could apply for Canadian citizenship. And we got two, Edie and Yusuf. And actually, it was funny because a guy from our platoon was doing a tasking at the CNE down in Toronto, and I can't remember, I think it was Edie, actually like was there and like saw him and was like, oh my god, like, and they met up again.
Like
years,
a moment, yeah.
like years later.
Wow.
He got his citizenship and made his way to Canada.
Yo, how do you feel about that kind of program?
It's amazing. Like, I think that's fantastic. That's where like the hearts and minds stuff comes in, right?
Yeah.
So we're not just there to, occupy your country. We're there to help and make better. So if you want to come and help us, we're going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that like necessarily they have to leave their country for us to help them. Like, if that's what they choose to do, then I don't know. I don't see why we shouldn't help them with that. If they want to come to Canada, like, why not?
Like, I don't know too much about the interpreters, but I remember listening to a guy named Dan Crenshaw, and he's like a congressman, ex-SEAL and stuff, and he got blown up, right? And I think his interpreter stepped on a bomb on a mine too, and which caused his injury too. But his perspective on it, from what I remember him saying, was that like they're like the unsung heroes of the war, and they get caught up like in the middle of it.
Yeah,
where they don't even get accepted by their own people sometimes, and they don't sometimes get accepted by the coalition, and so they get stuck in this limbo. And then I heard the program after like the U.S. pulled out, where a lot of these people were getting forgotten about, or administrative backlog was causing some delays.
Yeah, definitely.
And these people get targeted and shit.
There was that too. Like, I don't know. Like, there's always the rumor mill, right?
Yeah.
But like, we heard stuff like an interpreter would be working for us, and then he would just get this phone call saying that like, we have your family, and that's it. Like, you are helping the coalition forces, and now your family's dead. And then these interpreters would disappear for a while, and then they'd come back, and like, you don't know if it's true or not, but like, that's devastating. I would hope that it's not true, but they weren't good people. So, not the interpreters that say the Taliban, but I wouldn't put it, beneath them. They would definitely do something like that. I think that's an easy way to strike at us without directly striking at us, right? Which is kind of what their MO is. Inflict as much damage, and us not being able to communicate or interact with the local population is pretty damaging.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? And if you make it a big enough, and then we do the same thing, right? We use people as examples, to dissuade people from having other behavior, right? So you kill an interpreter's family, it's going to dissuade other interpreters or other people from stepping forward to act as interpreters.
And
crazy.
Like the idea of these interpreters, like what Dan Crenshaw was saying, is like these guys are like idealists. Like you have to be an idealist to some degree to really put your family on the line like that. It's crazy. Yeah,
well, one of our interpreters, we called him Teacher, and he was ex-Mujahideen, like fighting. He fought the Russians.
Oh man!
Yeah, for like the entire time, and he was one of our interpreters for a while. And he was crazy, but he was good. Like, but he believed in what we were trying to do because we, weren't there to occupy. We were there to lift them up, right?
Mm-hmm. Right on. Man, we didn't even get to like the intro or anything. This is awesome, though. Right into it. Yo, I love this.
B-roll.
Hey, yo, let's get this cracking. This is Project Warrior, episode 5. I am Manny Singh. My guest today is a non-commissioned officer in the 1st Battalion, Royal Canadian Regiment. He has fought many battles in his life, from the front lines in Afghanistan to fighting cancer at home. He yet again prepares for expeditionary operations with the 1st Battalion. He's a family man, a leader, and an incredible human being. Please welcome Sgt Josh Austin. Thanks for coming online, Sarge.
Of course.
Hey, like, Let's get right into it, man. Like, what's your current role right now at the battalion?
So right now I'm currently with Bravo Company again. I've spent basically like 99% of my career in Bravo Company, which is amazing. Born and bred there, and it's my home in the battalion. So right now I am 5 platoons lab sergeant. You had Warrant Jeremy LeBlanc on here.
Yeah.
Who's my warrant. Great guy. And that's pretty much what I'm doing in battalion right now.
Right on.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about where you grew up, where you were born?
So I grew up in Southern Ontario. I was born in Ajax, so a little east of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in Whitby. My parents got divorced when I was young, and we ended up having to move. So I moved to Bowmanville Curtis when I was 7. Stayed there for a couple of years. And like anybody that's come from a broken home, divorce and stuff like that, you move around a lot. Parents have their ways of, pulling kids back and forth. So me and my sister kind of like flip-flopped from mother to father. I grew up, lived in Toronto for a while, Richmond Hill. And then finally, both my parents decided, I guess, maybe put their differences aside and kind of maybe do what was best for us. And they both moved to Bowmanville so that we could be near both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the majority of the time I spent with my mom. So I basically lived in Bowmanville for the majority of my life. Yeah.
Man, for them to do that takes a lot of that takes a lot.
Well, if, there aren't many instances of them ever agreeing on anything while I was growing up. So I'm glad they finally, at least did one thing that was good for us. Not saying that my parents are terrible people,
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I'm glad that they could agree on some things sometimes. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
It's a hard thing to share.
An
So,
open book.
growing up, what got you interested in the military?
So I actually tried to join the military when I was 18. And because of medical reasons, I got denied.
Okay.
I'm not going to really go into
Yeah,
it. But medical reasons, I got denied. And eventually, worked some jobs, did some stuff. And then went to a doctor and got that kind of sorted out. Then letter stating that had been sorted out, sent it to the recruitment center. And literally, once they got that letter saying that was no longer an issue, it was I got my job offer. Literally 3 or 4 days later, I think. And then 5 days after that, I was on a plane to Sgt Josh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that time between you first getting denied or rejected to when you got accepted, how much time passed between that?
So it was about 6 years. Yeah.
6 years?
Yeah. Yeah, 5-6 years.
Did you kind of give up on it at some point, or?
Nope. So in between that time, actually, a friend of mine, who's actually posted here too, the 1st Battalion.
Okay.
Yeah. So he retired. Well, not retired, but he ended up leaving the military as a corporal. Corporal Dan Nish. A lot of people will remember him.
Shout out.
Yeah. He was. I think he was in for about 10 years.
Okay.
So there was a small group of us that grew up together in Bowmanville. And he joined the military, and I ended up going to his battle school graduation in Meaford. All of us did. And that was my first real experience with the military atmosphere, other than the stuff that he had been telling us from in basic and stuff like that. And I saw it, and it was just these guys that were just like all of us, except in a much bigger group, right? So my little group of 8 friends, and then this huge group of 40 friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like us, and they loved each other like brothers, and it was amazing. And I was like, you know what? That seems awesome to me, and that's what I wanted, because that's why I wanted to join when I was younger. And 9/11 had happened and stuff like that, and I wanted to kind of do my part, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so being denied did kind of suck, but then seeing it again kind of reinvigorated me, And that's when I went and got the medical stuff sorted out. And then, I was like, hop, skip, and a jump into friggin' basic.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah.
So what made you want to go infantry, though?
Well, he was infantry, and I didn't really research anything else, right? Because it's like, nobody wants to be the robber, you know what I mean? Everybody wants to be the cop. So you want to be the good guy, so it's just like in the Army, nobody wants to play supply tech.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with supply techs. Everybody has their part, one big team.
But stereotypically, everyone imagines the infantry.
Exactly, right? We all watch the movies. It's the infantry that got stuff done. It's like you're the ones fighting and dying for your country. And that's what I wanted. And it's actually funny because in Jeremy's episode, he's like goes in and said, "I wrote infantry, infantry, infantry." I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I wrote infantry, infantry, infantry. And they actually did the same thing to me. They're like, "Well, you did really good on your CFATs. Like, do you want to maybe look at other trades?" I'm like, "Nope." Infantry. They're like, "You know that you can go officer too, right?" I'm like, "Nope, I want to work for a living."
No way.
Yeah.
They offered you officer as well,
Yeah, yeah. So I scored pretty high on my CFATs, and they offered me pretty much whatever trade I wanted. So, but no, I wanted, and a part of me too wanted to be with my buddy Dan, right? Like, he was already here, and I'm like, that's where I want to be. I want to go there, be with him, go to war. That's be like awesome. Yeah, and then I was off to basic and battle school.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'm like, what was that like, man? How old are you, by the way, by this time?
So now I'm 23, or just turned 24. So I'm a little bit older now, more mature, got some life experience under the belt, right? And then I get to basic, and it's like there was a couple other older guys. Cochran was like my fire team partner, and he was like another. He was also going infantry. He ended up going PPCLI. I don't know if he's still in or not. We kind of lost touch after basic, but it was actually kind of funny because our course was 15 infantry, 15 MPs, and then this little smattering of other trades. So it was like the entire course. We had like these infantry instructors that were like, it was all French instructors, so like they didn't like the MPs, and then they were like teaching us not to like the MPs, and so we kind of had like this little
rivalry?
Infantry MP rivalry during basic, and of course we always wanted everything. We would not let them ever beat us. But it was good. It was a great experience. I always thought that the military was going to be like your actions would speak for you. You know what I mean? Like if you had an aptitude for something, like that's what would matter. So if you were super fit, super smart, super switched on, like that would be the stuff that mattered. And you slowly learn that that's not really the case, right? There's always underlying things that political stuff that people have to deal with.
Of course.
And I get that. And you learn quick that a lot of it is like a game. Right? And if you learn how to play the game, you'll be a lot happier, right? Mm-hmm. And because I was older, like you're sitting there and you're being screamed at because something isn't perfect. Meanwhile, you know that it will never be perfect. It can't be perfect. It's impossible for it to be perfect. But you being older, you understand that it's not the fact that it's not perfect. It's the fact that they want you to just keep trying to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that if you understood that, you had a lot easier time because nothing really affected you because you'd be getting yelled at and be like, yeah, I get it. Yes, Sergeant. Yes, Sergeant.
You wouldn't take it so personally.
No, you didn't take anything.
Like, man, that I'm terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I should leave or quit or some shit. Like,
Yeah, so that was my basic experience, and because there was a lot of infanteers on it, there was a lot of the same mentality, right?
Yeah.
And the older guys would kind of like take the younger guys and be like, hey, listen, like, you don't take any of this stuff seriously, man. It's just a game. They're going to yell at you regardless. Like, instead of spending 9 hours a night trying to get your locker layout right, maybe, focus on this stuff instead, or, read up on this stuff, or, to be better for the next day, because they're going to rip your locker apart anyway. It's just little things like that would help people along and stop them from freaking out so much, right? Because that was the big thing. Is the younger guys like to freak out because they didn't experience anything, right? Like they were like playing video games in their basement, and now they're in basic, and it's a culture shock for them, right?
100%.
So it's pretty good.
Right on. So going through training, what did you know about the RCR?
Nothing. I knew other than what my buddy Dan had told me, which was really nothing. It was just like typical life in a infantry battalion was pretty much the kind of stuff that he really ever got to, and the stuff that I saw at his graduation parade. So I'm like, they like to drink, they like to fight. I'm like, I can get on board with that.
Raw infantry culture, yeah.
Infantry. Yeah, I can get on board with that. Yeah, so I like that. That's pretty much all I really knew. And then I got to battle school, and it was like, it was the same thing, right? It was like you were held to a much higher standard because you were infantry, right? It wasn't the same. It was always, your instructors always be harping, be like, no, like this isn't like, purple trade. This is, you are infantry. You guys have to be stronger, tougher, more violent, but controlled violence. And it was like, for all the stuff that they would teach you, they'd be like, you have to have restraint as well, right? You're like a caged dog, but you got to know when to let loose. You can't just be crazy all the time.
I think being infantry, a big part of it is the attitude. It's that attitude that feeds into everything. And like what they tell you about, this is just a game. Like, all these kind of things to make it through the training. It kind of helps you get that perspective that sometimes some people really need it more than others to navigate their way through the training.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And the training is hard for a reason, right? Like, we don't want to breed weakness. Not saying that people are weak inherently, but, the suffering is what makes you stronger. Because you know that if I can make it through this, well, that other thing that I thought was hard yesterday was nothing. And that's the big thing about our training, right? Is that compounding suffering that makes you realize that it's not really that bad, and and that's powerful stuff.
So when you went through your training, you make it to your battalion. You ended up in the 1st Battalion. What was that like being in 1st Battalion? Now you're in a mech unit. Yeah,
so I didn't know the difference between any of the battalions, right? So they offered us 1, 2, and 3. And like basically it was, I don't know if it actually meant anything, but they're like, oh, just, write on a piece of paper, name, service number, and then like 1, 2, 3, which battalion you want to go to. Like, 1 first or 2 first in the order that you want them. I don't know if they actually looked at them or not. I don't think they probably, it was probably a trick to make us feel like we had a choice. Because obviously it's whoever needed us was getting us, right? Yeah. Especially since it was like in the middle of Afghanistan, right? So it was whoever was deploying and needed dudes was getting the dudes, right? And some of the guys actually got sent out west. I don't know if they had like extenuating circumstances or anything like that, but yeah. So I came here. I asked for the 1st just because that was where my buddy was, right? And I wanted to be in the same battalion as him. And it was just before, like I got here just before they deployed in 08. Missed the deployment, was on the 10%, but never, like I got here after the 10% had already been basically stood up. So it was way on the bottom of the list, being qualified nothing, didn't really have anything to bring to the table except 2 feet in a heartbeat. And yeah, so didn't get to deploy in 08, unfortunately. But was in the same battalion as my buddy. It was.
Did he end up going?
He didn't go on 08 either. He was in the 10% pool. He went to Texas and did all the training and everything like that, but never got picked up.
So the 10%ers are always involved in all the training, so that they could get pulled no matter.
Exactly.
They're always on par with the training those guys.
It's instant, right? So like they don't have to go and do any theater mission specific training or anything like that. They have everything, all the checks in the box. So it's literally, we need a replacement. You're the replacement. Get on the plane, and that's it, right? So yeah, it was crazy though when I first got here. I remember my buddy Dan taking me through the shacks, and there was this guy, and he was just standing in his room with the door open, and he had like this full body mirror, and he was just like standing in his underwear, and he was like screaming at himself in the mirror, and I'm like, where the fuck am I? And I didn't like, and Dan's just like, I don't worry about him, he's fine. And we're just like, oh my god. And then I met another guy, and he was like hammer fisting a microwave oven to death, and there was like blood everywhere, and I'm just like, I might have made a mistake. This is crazy. These people are crazy.
This is at the Shacks?
This is at the Shacks, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the Shack life.
Oh, dude.
And that was my first, that was day one.
Yeah.
Like, not even day one. That was like hour one.
No way.
Yeah, that wasn't even like my first work day. That was like, I got here from Meaford at like 9 o'clock at night, and this was at like 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, I'm not dropping any names because anybody that watches this, if that person watches it, they'll know exactly who they are.
That reminds me of that scene in Jarhead when he shows up to his battalion the first time, and they're like, they're initiating the guy? Yeah. Crazy.
It was basically that, yeah. It was pretty crazy. But for every like weirdo guy that I met, there was 10 amazing guys that I met too, right? So it wasn't what I expected.
For sure. So 308 leaves, departs.
Yeah.
What happens with your career until 2010?
So basically it was just a lot of training, right? Like right now we know like the cycle of road to high readiness, right? Well, it was basically the same thing, right? You would have your starting of training for deployment, like the whatever list the battalion had to make and put names and spots and stuff like that would get done, and then it would be like the training cycle would start, right? So you'd start right from the beginning, you know, like pairs, fire, and movement, you know, section, platoon, company,
crawl, walk, run.
Yeah, everything, right? There was lots of courses, lots of training, and then we did when we like officially stood up. It was like 3 days before that, I think. So we were out on our next. It was actually called Royal Gunfighter, and for whatever reason, so at this point I've gotten I think like 2 courses. I got my air brakes and my lav driver. It's like that's all I could do. I could drive a lav, and I could drive a lav really good. Top candidate on my lav.
Hey, no big deal.
All my lav courses, top candidate. I really wanted. Well, I figured if I'm going to be in a mechanized battalion, you know, like that's our bread and butter, right? Is that vehicle, and I'm going to be the best at that.
Hell yeah!
And so I was a driver for 2-2 Bravo in 5 platoon, and we were on Royal Gunfighter, and for whatever reason, so usually the way it worked was like vehicle crews were like left to do vehicle stuff, and then like dismounts did dismount stuff. And for whatever reason, everybody had to go this night to go and do this march to do a raid or an ambush somewhere. We didn't really get any instruction other than like put all your stuff on and go this way. And it was like 9 hours later. I don't even know how many kilometers we had gone. Like it's the middle of the night now. We've lost like a third of our company to injury, like because nobody had night vision. Like we were just like stumbling around in the woods blind. And I was like, it was literally like, I think there was 5 people left in my platoon. Like I was the section commander as a no-hook private. It was me. I think the platoon commander was there. He might not have been. The platoon warrant was there. Warrant Eric Leclerc. Myself, Ed Turner, and I can't even remember if there was anybody else. It might have just been the 3 of us left in our platoon. And we take this break because Recce's lost trying to lead us into the assault position for this. I can't even remember if it was a raid or an ambush or whatever it was. And we sit down. I sit down against this tree, and then the warrant tells me, okay, we gotta go. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I can't stand up. I'm like, I'm telling my legs to move, and they won't move. He's like, okay. Because we're like, we have all of our kit, right? Like we're basically like mimicking deployment weight now, right? Like our backpacks are full. We got plates in, full, like, I can't remember, it was like 10 or 15 mags of ammo.
Full battle rattle.
It was everything, right? And so he comes over and he grabs onto me and starts pulling me up. And as I go from sitting to standing, I feel like this super sharp pop in my back. And it's just like excruciating pain. I ended up breaking my sacrum.
What is that?
So it's like the joint in your pelvis that stops your pelvis from just free floating.
Oh, shit.
Basically. Yeah, I snapped it right in half.
Whoa.
Yeah, and this is like 3 days before the task force is standing up to start up training for going to Afghanistan, right?
For 110?
Yeah, for 110.
Oh, snap. So you were not happy to hear that.
No. And like, it was bad. I was paralyzed from the waist down for 12 days in the hospital.
Paralyzed from the waist down?
Yeah, I couldn't feel anything from the waist down, like catheter, colostomy bag.
Holy shit.
Yeah, in the hospital for 12 days. And then like 3 months of rehab, 3 more months of reconditioning, and I got cleared by the MO. I was still come to work. I was actually living with my Master Corporal at the time, Master Corporal Andy McLeod. He's Warrant Andy McLeod now. I was living at his house because I was in the shacks and I couldn't walk or do anything for myself. So I was living with him and his wife in his PMQ because we had become good friends. And but they would still bring me in to do like all of the dagging and stuff like that. So I was still doing all the work to like go overseas because we didn't know how it was going to play out, right?
And you really wanted to go.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Well, that's what I signed up for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Wanted to go to war. And the day we were sending our kit to California for like the confirmation exercise, I think it was Fort Irwin we went to.
Mm-hmm.
I got cleared by the MO, so I was like the last person to put my barrack box and stuff on the truck. I like the Sergeant Major at the time, Sergeant Major Amaro, kind of like let me stay as lab crew, but put me as a gunner now, because I'd gotten that course as well.
Top candidate.
Yeah, top candidate, and put me in there, so I didn't really have to do much. I could go and do all of the training and participate and still do like my rehab and stuff to get back to where I needed to be to actually deploy. So like I got the battalion did a solid for me. My company really took care of me. And that wasn't that wasn't the last time they did either. But I did it all, made it all, went overseas. Yeah.
How'd that make you feel, man?
Well, it's like you give what you get what you give, right? So I walked until I literally broke my back. You know, like that to me is like, that's, I'm trying to toot my own horn, but that's dedication, right? If I'm that dedicated to my service,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm glad to see that it was reciprocated back from the battalion, right? So they took care of me because they wanted me back.
Hell yeah. So, okay, you're on 110 now.
Yeah.
You guys depart. You guys arrive in Afghanistan. What was your experiences like over there? First impressions, do you remember?
So first impression, landing in Camp Mirage, which didn't exist, in UAE. We go to get off the plane and it's like, man, they need to turn those jets off. It is hot. And they're like, no man, the jets are off. Like the plane's off. They're like, we've made a mistake. It's like 65 degrees out and you're just... And it's just, you get off the plane and it's just like walls of refrigerated water. And everybody's just like, crushing bottles of water because it's so hot. And then after you crushed your bottles of water, you immediately went to the washroom because that was the only place that had air conditioning. So it's just like as many people crammed into these little tiny washrooms as possible because it was sickeningly hot. And that was like my first memory of being over there was just how hot it was. And then you do all your stuff there, you get your weapon, blah blah blah. And then you get on the Herc to fly into CAF. And so we fly into CAF. Then we get met there by Warrant Sean Reed. He had gone there a couple months or a couple weeks earlier with snipers. And he had set everything up for our arrival. We get there, we get our bed spaces and stuff like that, and it's just the same thing. It's just like, it's hot. And I don't know if a lot of people know that it's like, the Canadian compound was like right near the shit pond. So it was just hot and just stunk. It was the worst.
This is in Calf?
Yeah. This was in Calf.
Man.
But it was good. It was good to be there finally, right? Like you went through what felt like years of training for this one specific thing, and now you were there to do it, right? And it was really good. It was a great feeling. So then we did like our acclimatization time, so you get a couple days you have like briefings and stuff like that. And I remember the one briefing that we get, it was like the IED threat briefing. And it's like this map of the region that we're going to. And there's this, like, all this red. And we're like, what's the red? And they're like, that's suspected IED locations or confirmed IED locations, like ones that had either gone off or they had found or whatever. And we're like, what's that little white spot in the middle? Like, that's where you're going. We're like, okay, all right. So yeah, it was like this little white donut in this sea of red. And we're like, well, great. And then lab crews got to go out before everybody because we went to the takeover from the PBCLI guys and do the vehicle handovers and stuff like that. And we get there, and it's like the Patricias are like in board shorts and aviators, and they're just tanned and flowing locks, and just they're all specimens at this point, you know what I mean? And all I've had to do is work out in suntan for 6 or 7 months. And we're like in like full kit, like dying. And so we end up going out to a range to like confirm the zero of the vehicles before we take them over. And we're on the firing line, we're shooting at the mountain and stuff like that. And Andy McLeod looks like over the side of the vehicle and he's like, sees something in the ground that didn't look right. And he's like, well, gets the PBCLI guy. He's like, what's that? And he's like, I don't know. And then the guy like leaves and he gets on the radio and he comes back and he's like, all right, well, we're going to get out of the vehicle and go over there now. So we all get out of the vehicle and we leave. And he's like, we're pretty sure that's an ID. And it turned out that it was.
On the range?
Yeah, on the range. So they had planted, it was a wash basin, like the big galvanized wash basins full of homemade explosives. So it was like 60 liters of homemade explosive, and it was literally 2 inches from our wheels on the lav.
Oh, shit.
So it was like day one outside the wire, find this massive IED. I was sitting on a cordon for like 10 hours, like waiting for EOD to come and do their exploitation of it and bip it. And I got sunburnt so bad, like even with my sleeves rolled down, I got sunburnt on my arms so bad they blistered.
Whoa.
Yeah, but just like the little tiny ones. So like I would rub my arm and it would just be wet afterwards. Like it was like, okay, well, I've got my sunburn done and I've got my first IED done, so pretty much it's all uphill from here. Yeah, it got really real really fast. Not to mention too that when we flew into our FOB Soja, they were dragging in a vehicle that had been struck by an IED a couple days earlier, and it was like ripped to shreds,
like obliterated.
Yeah, so I don't remember if anybody died, but I do remember he was either a private or a corporal. Corbison ended up losing a foot. He got caught. He was the driver.
Was he a Patricia?
No, he was an RCR guy. So
okay.
I think there was a couple of RCRs that were there earlier, and he had gotten his foot caught, basically cut off by metal inside.
Oh, like, shit.
Yeah. So it was like you saw the carnage that could happen, found an IED, like, so you're like, okay, well, it's super real now. But it was good to get it out of the way right away because there was no apprehension, right? There was no time for it. There was no time to like sit there and think about the what ifs because you'd already found it like right away. So it was good and bad. Like it was scary, but.
So you see all this stuff, and then like you guys start going on patrol now?
Yep. So we took our cop. So we were.
And a cop is a combat outpost?
Yeah, combat outpost. So we started closest to Soja. So the Patricias called it Tombstone because it was right beside a graveyard in the town of Haji Baba. We ended up changing all of the outpost names to like Pashto names. So ours ended up becoming Shikari. I have no idea what it stands for. I don't remember. It might be Tombstone Pashto. I don't know. Yeah, so we were there. We were only like, I don't know, maybe 500 to 800 meters away from the fob, just right down the road. And then there was Patricia, which was further inside, I think, Nakone. And then Balpine was further from them. So Balpine was like the furthest west, like Canadian forces. Like there was nothing except bad guys past them. Yeah, and that was basically what we rolled into. And we started doing. They just started doing patrols with us. So like every section kind of got given like their own little AO. Everybody started with like a patrol of Haji Baba because it was literally like our outpost was in the town of Haji Baba, and it was only like a short 40-minute patrol, right? So that was just kind of like to get your feet wet and get a taste for what was happening. Get used to like the obscene amount of weight that you're carrying. So we went there as mechanized, but we never did anything mechanized. It was always light patrols. Like the only time we ever used a vehicle was like if we needed support or something like that. We got in a firefight.
Why do you think that was?
It was just easier. There was one main highway, Lake Effect, that ran east-west through our AO. But other than that, it was like just like sandy black tracks, or they called them roads. Like they're more, if you're looking for a description, like from our point of view, they'd be like a black track. And then it was just grape rows, like grape fields everywhere. So you really couldn't maneuver with the vehicles. If you were going to use the vehicles for anything, you would basically be really stuck in these one way in, one way out routes, right? Which is not a really great idea in a IED rich environment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we only use them really as like if like shit had already hit the fan and people needed support. That was really the only time we used them.
Okay. So I remember you also telling me you had to patrol an area called Fatula as well.
Yeah.
And was that part of the same COP?
Yeah, so that was a little north from where we were. So we had basically Haji Baba, a little bit of Nakone. We started with this other place. It was like, we just called it KK. It was like Kari Kala, or I don't remember the actual name for it, KK, and then another town called Zalakan. We ended up giving KK to the 3 RCR guys that came and were part of our battle group because it didn't really make sense for us, because for us to walk there, it was like a pretty decent distance. Like I don't remember exactly, but it was like 4+ kilometers to walk there, where their COP was like 800 meters from it. So it didn't make sense for us to patrol that. So we ended up giving that to them. And then we basically did Haji Baba, a little bit of Nakone, Fatula, and Zalakan. So Zalakan was like our furthest east, Fatula was our north, Nakone was our west, and then Haji Baba was right where we were. So we kind of like, each section took turns doing Haji Baba because it was literally like a 30-45 minute thing, and then it was done. And they like we were interacting with those people on a day-to-day basis anyways, because we lived with them basically. And then we would rotate like the days that we patrolled, but each section basically just got given their own AO. And so 22 Bravo got Fatula, and we patrolled that place sucked. Like it was like firefights all the time, either in or out, IEDs all the time. It was crazy. It was a crazy place.
Sarge, do you mind sharing what your first experience of like battle or combat was like?
So like everybody talks about like Medusa for Afghanistan. That was like the real fight, right? That was like the force on force. Like the Taliban was still trying to fight us peer to peer. Our experiences with combat were a lot different. Ours was like, they would take pot shots at us, from super far away. We would rarely even ever see them. Like
they're using more of guerrilla warfare tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
Blending with the population.
It was because by the time we got there, it was like the IED was king. that was what I think we ended up finding something like 400 and something IEDs on my tour.
Whoa.
Like as an AO, right? Not just like my platoon, but everybody together as a battle group. We found it was like 400 and something. So it was a crazy amount, right? And and we use the term firefights, but it wasn't really, the majority of the time it wasn't really a firefight. It was like they would take a couple pot shots at us from somewhere, and then we would return fire, and they would run away or drop their gun. Because our ROEs got restricted quite a bit by that time. So like unless you had PID, positive identification, you couldn't engage, right? Mm-hmm. So if they were shooting at you and then they dropped behind a wall and dropped their gun and then walked out from behind the wall, you couldn't shoot them.
And they knew these kind of rules.
Oh yeah,
that
of course
existed,
they're
right?
not stupid. Like they're very smart, and
they're playing the game.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like they're in their minds they're right? Like in their minds we're the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to do whatever they have to do to win. And they knew that we were held to these restrictions, so they would use that to their advantage. Just like if we knew something that didn't, breach any of the rules of war that we adhere to, we would use those to our advantage, right? So they you can't fault them for that. But it sucked because you wanted that. That's what you wanted as a soldier. You wanted the real fight, right? You don't ever want anybody to get hurt, but in the deep dark part of your heart, that's what you want. As an infantier, you want to get in that fight, and you never really got it. We got one. It was a really good one, but it was most of the time they would shoot and scoot, and they'd fire an RPG at you and run away, or something like that, right? Like we had grenades thrown over the wall of our outpost. Mark Dennis, Mark Dennis almost died. He had just gotten up to go to the washroom or something like that, and they threw 2 grenades over the wall, and they rolled right down into the tent that he was sleeping in and blew up, riddled his laundry bag with shrapnel. And if it had been, if even 2 minutes earlier, he would have been dead. But no injuries, nothing, and he kept all the clothes and kept wearing it, even though it had shrapnel holes. He's like, well, I can't get blown up twice, right? Yeah, it's just riddled with shrapnel holes.
Some superstition,
Well, you know what I mean? You gotta use what you gotta use to get out of bed.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff. We did so many IEDs. It was just, that was the biggest thing, right? It was hard to not go somewhere and worry about that because it was so prevalent. You were less worried about getting shot at than you were about getting blown up. And we actually, so we sustained 2 casualties on my tour. We had, from my platoon anyways. So it was Corporal William Goodwin and then now Master Warrant Officer Eric Leclerc both got blown up on the same day.
In the same incident too?
In the same incident. So Will ended up losing both his legs and he almost lost his left arm. And then Eric came out on the to react to the contact
as the platoon 2IC.
As the platoon 2IC, and he was the second last guy coming back other than his security, and he stepped on an IED too. After I can't even imagine how many people had walked the same path for the last 2 hours, and then so I'm the consensus is between a lot of people that it was a command detonated one, and they were waiting for him because if you've ever, I don't think you've ever met him,
no,
but he is a very distinguishable fellow. He's might as well be 9 feet tall. He's a massive man, so he sticks out in a crowd a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think that they were probably gunning for him because he stood out so much. And probably because he was bossing everybody around.
And he had that command presence.
Well, yeah,
they
of course
figure
he did,
that
right?
out.
Yeah, they're not stupid. So I think that's probably what happened. And then, but it ended up not detonating fully. So he had a lot of damage. His tour was over. He had a lot of damage done to his foot. Not he didn't lose it or anything like that. But it was lots of fractures inside.
Serious enough to put him out.
Yeah, serious enough that that was it for him. Yeah, so that was a pretty crappy day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people. And so Will was my fire team partner, and I was supposed to go on that patrol. And that morning, me and Andy and I think Farrell had got called to the QRF. Like, we had to go do QRF in Soja. And, you know, whenever we knew that our guys were going out on patrol, we would always, like, you know, sit on the HESCO or whatever and watch Fatula, right? And so we hear the explosion, and I know it sounds like really weird and it's hard to explain, but like, I knew the second I heard the explosion that Will had been hurt. Like, I felt it in my bones. I don't know what else to call it. Like
some sixth sense.
Yeah, it's just like me and Will did everything together. We were like best friends. Before tour, during tour, like we did everything together. And I knew it was him. I knew it. There was no doubt in my mind that it was him. And we're like, QRF's getting spooled up, or IRF, or whatever you want to call it, quick reaction force, immediate reaction force. Got called different things. And I'm sitting in the vehicle, waiting to go. And they're like, we haven't had confirmation yet. So, and then Andy pulls me aside, and then he's like, yeah, Will got hurt. I'm like, well, we got to go. And he's like, yeah, you're not going. I'm like, well, I'm going. You're not going to stop me. Eventually they conceded and let me go, as long as I promised not to commit war crimes. Yeah, like, that's a bond that you don't get anywhere else, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing, there's no other job on the planet that you could, you know, be that close to somebody that you would know something like that, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to describe with words. It was a feeling, right? I just knew it. Yeah, I don't know how people won't believe me or whatever and say that I'm full of shit, but I feel it.
Man, I believe you.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's the crazy stuff that we deal with in our job, right? Is we get that close to people, so like, you know, you see grown men cry doing the repatriation ceremonies and stuff like that, and people think it's weakness. It's not weakness. That's like the epitome of strength to me. Like, you know, you can't be that close to somebody that you're not related to any other place other than this. It's crazy. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. Like, that's a powerful experience and story, you know?
Yeah. I haven't experienced as much as some, but I've, you know, experienced more than others. You know, I'm more than happy to share those experiences. Yeah. There's other stuff too, but it's private. More private.
Sure.
You know, there's always going to be those things that, you know, as far as, you know, this is for people that might not have experienced that kind of stuff yet. There's always going to be the things that you take with you. They'll be with you forever, right? You know, it was a horrible place, and horrible things happened, and sometimes you were not a part of it, but you witnessed the horrible things, and that's another reason why we do what we do, right? We go to those places and we're subjected to those things so that other people don't have to be, right? Because I like to think that the breed of people that come to this profession are more able to deal with that kind of stuff than maybe the normal person, and we do this so that they don't have to experience that stuff.
I think that plays an important role in what we do.
100%.
And like, you come back from those experiences and you share that knowledge and the wisdom that comes from those experiences, and I think that's powerful, right? Mm-hmm. Those are unique circumstances that not everybody will ever go through ever in their lives. Most people probably never will, especially if you live in Canada, in a great place like this, where you have to volunteer and you have to go through all of that hardship and training. Like, you broke your back just to get your ass to Afghanistan to go fight.
Yeah.
You broke your back just to go to war. Yeah. You know?
I did everything in my power to make it back, you know what I mean? Because you didn't, at that point, like, I didn't think that I was letting myself down by not going. I was feeling like I was letting my section down or my platoon down by not being there, right? So I did everything in my power to get back to them, right? And that's, I think we've kind of lost that, you know, bond, not necessarily on purpose, but just with the way that retention goes and the tempo that we're at. We don't get that kind of bond, and people don't get to experience that kind of commitment that you can have to this job where it's not about you, it's about them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you would do literally anything up to giving your life for them. And you would do it willingly. Like there would be no hesitation, there would be no second thoughts, it would be instant.
I think when you're on like a course, you kind of get a taste of that. Like you kind of,
yeah.
but it's just a taste, like a teaspoon of it. But like being in the military now, when we're not directly engaged in warfare, especially in the infantry battalions, I think it's hard for that idea of resonating, like going to that extreme. It's hard for it to resonate with people, especially if we're not at war right now.
And I don't think that's something that you can maintain for a long period of time either, right? And that's why we have the ebb and flow of the training cycle.
Yeah.
Is because like you can only be put like to that high of a level for so long, and then you have to kind of like relax for a little bit, and then you get to go back up to that high level. But because we're not, like you said, not in war, it's not wartime anymore. We don't really need to get possibly to that high of a level. So, you know, like, and that's what I mean, where some people aren't going to get to experience that unless there's another conflict, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And like you said, we get a teaspoon of it. You'll still get, like, don't get me wrong, we suffer a lot in training. And like those bonds that you build in suffering are going to be the strongest bonds that you'll ever have.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's, you know, this is our time of suffering here, and then, you know, like Afghanistan training suffering was like this. You're still, this normal suffering is like this. Mm-hmm. So you're still getting that, you know, a good taste of it. But
and I'm thankful to have guys like you around, because like guys like you, when we have leadership like yourself involved in our training right now, I think it kind of creates a better atmosphere for us to have more commitment to our training, especially when veterans like you involved in the training. Like guys are still breaking their knees, and they're still giving it hard, man. And like when I see a guy like you out there in the training area, and especially when you're taking the training very seriously, it makes me more confident in what I'm doing. It makes me care more too. Well,
that's our job, right? As leaders, you have to instill that confidence in your subordinates that the training system works, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll always hear the griping of, oh, we're doing this again, doing section attacks again. Well, yeah, you are, because you have to be proficient at it.
You gotta get those reps in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like LB said that, right?
Yeah.
You gotta get the reps in. If you don't, like, and you'll, well, you guys might not see it, but in conflict, you do see it. Like, you don't, you know, like, your mind does pretty weird things when, you know, the adrenaline kicks in and the rounds are flying over your head and stuff like that. And you'll see people react differently, right? And without that training, the reaction could be really, really bad, right? And that's where you get the guys that kind of shut down, withdraw into themselves, and they're kind of useless for a little bit. They'll come out of it eventually, but that's what you're trying to get rid of, right? Is that initial shock to the system.
Yeah.
So that's why we train, right? That's why it's repetition, combat inoculation. You know, that's why we use blanks, even though I hate them. I think they're worse than beneficial, but, you know, hearing that sound of your gun over and over and over and over 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, you know, so when you hear that sound in combat, you're not going to freak out. You know, it's all for a purpose. And, you know, showing the senior leadership, showing the faith in that process is what allows, I think, the younger guys to have faith in it as well, right? They're like, well, he's been doing it for freaking forever, and he still is on board with it. Well, yeah, maybe it's not as bad as I think it is.
Especially if you're always and you're looked at as like a respectable leader, and you're the guy who facilitates most of our training. There must be a real reason behind why we still do it. A method to the madness, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like on like the most intense course I don't want to say the most intense, but I guess CQCI, Close Quarter Combat Instructor.
Yep.
And on that course, we learned about the repetition, how it plays this huge role, because like we're in the chaos of going toe to toe, or on those 3-on-1 scenarios, those crazy scenarios they put us through.
Yep.
The saying is that in that times of chaos, you're gonna go into like autopilot mode, and you're gonna fall back to your lowest level of training. You're not gonna sometimes rise to the occasion in the madness.
No.
You're gonna fall back, and that's what the muscle memory and all the training.
That's the hope, though, right? The hope is that you rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you always have that lowest level of training to fall back to. Like, I think it was Mike Tyson, says everybody's got the perfect plan until you get punched in the face. You know what I mean? You can plan and plan and plan and plan, but if you're not used to getting punched in the face, it's still going to be a shock to you.
That's why our training has to be hard. That's why our training has to be deliberate.
Yep. You always train harder than you fight, right? so that when you get to the combat, it seems easier than it maybe necessarily is.
100%. 100%.
And if you, and that's where Eric came into play. He was the 25% harder. He made, and everybody's got their own opinion of Eric Leclerc. I love the man. I would do anything for him. He's like the ideal infantry soldier in my mind. If you wanted to be, if you had an entire military of Erics, we would be unstoppable. We would conquer the world. And we would do it with a smile on our face and professionalism, with, perfectly formed beret that could deflect a bullet. It would be amazing. And he instilled a lot of that into 5 Platoon. It was because that was his job, right? And he took it super seriously. And that's where I learned a lot of it from, was from him.
Right on.
Yeah, he was super cool about that stuff.
I appreciate you talking about your experiences overseas. I know you could talk all day about this stuff. But to carry on further with our interview here, do you feel like you learned a lot?
Yes, of course. Like there's no other experience like it, right? Like that's like nothing.
Okay, cool. 1 hour mark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nothing will ever come close to that, right? Like that's an experience of a lifetime. And if I never got to go overseas again, like I learned so much from just that one tour that I could carry that. You know what I mean? I want to go again. I hope that we don't hope for conflict, but we're prepared for it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing. Is any loss of life is a tragedy, and I don't ever wish conflict to happen. But if it does, we need to be ready for it. So, and using the experience that we get from things like Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, all that stuff, Korea, World War II, World War I, we always learn from our mistakes and our lessons and train harder, train better, find more efficient ways to be proficient at our job. Afghanistan was, you learned what it meant to be properly trained for something. Because when you got there, it was like everything flowed. Everybody knew their job. Everybody was proficient at it, because if you weren't, you didn't go. So it was nice to see that level of training that you got to actually utilize, right? The being able to live in super harsh conditions, not that they were like really harsh, but we were living in mud huts. We had fans, but we didn't have air conditioners or anything like that. Some people did, but experiences may differ.
Mm-hmm.
We had fridges for cold water. We got really lucky, and we had some reservist CIMIC guys with us, and one of them was like a Red Seal chef, civvy side.
Whoa!
So he cooked for us all the time, and it was like I ate better in Afghanistan than I did in Canada. Like, man, some of the food that he could make on a charcoal barbecue would blow your mind.
Yo, who is this dude?
I can't remember. It was like Wilson or Williams or something. He ended up going on like the PC chef competition.
Oh, really?
And he won it.
Yo, was it Taylor? No, okay.
No, I don't think it was Taylor. It might have been. I don't know.
I know a guy named Winslow Taylor, and he...
Oh, it was Winslow.
Psyops,
yeah,
man.
Winslow.
Okay,
yes.
Yo, he was from my old reserve unit.
Yes, Winslow.
Yeah, right on.
He was my chef.
Wow.
So he was a chef. He wasn't my chef, but he cooked for us all the time. And it was the best food I'd ever eaten, man. And I don't know, he made stuff taste like, I don't know, like it blew your mind.
Yeah.
Because you're cooking in a metal pot on a charcoal barbecue that we built, and I don't even know that spices could taste like that. Like, it was crazy, and it was so good.
Oh yeah.
And then we would take turns, so he would cook a bunch of times, and then we would rotate through the platoons, and then it comes to our platoon, and they volunteer me to do it. So I'm just like, I can't cook. So I'm just like, just get the biggest pot, and it's just 70 boxes of Kraft Dinner. I got pictures of it too, just me with this big stick.
That's hilarious.
Kraft Dinner.
Some KD gumbo. Wow.
Everybody loved it though, because it was a taste of home, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. What a small world. I didn't even know you guys were together.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he was from my old unit. So he's one of the first guys I've met that rotated back from 110.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, he lived with us for, I think, 3 months.
Yeah. Wow.
He was a good dude.
Shout out to Winslow.
I got a lot of pictures of him cooking for us.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, he really went far in his his chef career.
Yeah.
Like,
He ended up winning
hard.
that competition, right?
He either won it or came in second,
Yeah.
but like he did really well. And I think his daughter is also into that
Oh yeah.
as well. Yeah.
That's so cool. Small world, eh?
Yeah. Wild. So where did your career go after that tour?
So I came back. So the entire time I was in Afghanistan, I was a no-hook private.
Oh really?
Yeah. But I was definitely due for my hook, and probably my corporals. But I was trying to do the whole like go right from no hook to corporal without getting caught.
Yeah.
And so after Eric got blown up and had to leave, he got replaced by Sergeant Byron Shepard. So he became our platoon 2IC, and like last day. We're ripping out, like the Van Doos have come in and taken over, and we're leaving because lab crews were the last to go. And I'm getting ready to like get on the Chinook in Soja, and he like throws me a hooked epaulet. And he's like, "Well, I guess you're trained now." Like something like 220 days in theater. Like, well, I guess you're like, I don't even know how many firefights. I guess you're trained now. Thanks, Warren. Well, it wasn't Warren, but just get on the Chinook. And as I was getting on, Don Cherry was walking off.
No way.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to like shake his
No,
hand?
he had to go.
Like,
Yeah, the FEs are pretty strict about loading and unloading.
And those are the flight engineers?
Well, yeah, because the Chinook's very vulnerable when it's on the ground. Right?
Oh, 100%.
So it was like, it's super fast on off.
So Don Cherry got flown up to where? To your
Soja.
cop?
Yeah, right to Soja.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, man. He was super for the troops. He came to Afghanistan all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, he had his tan CAD-PAT suit.
No way.
Yeah.
That must have been a morale booster, right?
I can't imagine how hot he was in it, though. Like,
Man.
I can
Way up for the boys.
Yeah, he loved it, man.
Right on.
He was 100% for the boys. It was pretty crazy.
That's
I
awesome.
wish I had gotten to talk to him, but I didn't, unfortunately. So get on, fly back. Then it was so we got back December 23rd, and it was like you're supposed to do like 3 half days, and then you go on your post deployment leave. But it was like Christmas times, like so 3 days would have put us over Christmas, and they basically just wanted everybody to be able to go. So we kind of did like a shotgun style like post tour, all the checks in the boxes that you're supposed to get like in the hangar that we landed at in Ottawa, and then got on the bus and like scattered. So we didn't have to end up doing the 3 days. And I went home. Then my post deployment leave, came back, got promoted to corporal.
Right on.
Yeah. Went on a tactical intelligence operator course. Yeah, and then it was just a bunch of training and stuff again. Like, so Afghanistan was still going on, but it wasn't really combat missions anymore. It was more like the, training mentoring. So, like, I can't remember what they were called. Like, the teams. Omelet,
yeah.
I think it was more like that stuff. And then, like, it was basic. And then, like, our commitment ended. So then it was, like, tear down, handover stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think anybody, like, I know one RC did a couple more, but it was very small. Like, wasn't like a full battle group. It would be like, like 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then for me, it was like training. Ended up getting married to my beautiful wife Joy. We had our first kid, and I took parental leave. So I took the full 9 months, which was like way too long. And it was going stir crazy by like month 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But we had like a super colicky baby. Like,
what's that mean?
So colic is just defined as a baby that cries for more than 2 hours constantly a day.
Oh.
So there's no reason for it. Doctors, it's just, that's the term, right? Is they cry, they don't know why. There's nothing physically wrong with them. Like, you can go and get them checked, obviously. Like, if they're crying for a long period of time, you can get them checked. But there was nothing wrong with our baby physically. So it was diagnosed as colic. And then it's basically, you just have to deal with it until it stops. And it was like 6 months in, and then she just stopped crying. But it was like, that was a hard 6 months. So I was glad to take the time, but career-wise, probably set me back a little bit. obviously, it's basically you're stopped for a year. Came back, did like the normal training cycle. That's, like the missions are pretty much done then. That was 2012. I think that was like our last roto was 2012 for 1RCR. I think, maybe, as far as I can remember. And then it was just like the perpetual training cycle. Wainwrights, Collaborative Spirits, Stalwart Guardians, over and over and over again. And yeah, you get a couple courses. You get, go on my leadership stuff, PLQ. Was still in Bravo Company the entire time. Like,
Oh, so you never got moved out of Bravo?
no, I was still in Bravo Company. Eventually went to brigade headquarters under Majakowski and Olstad, then Mercer. And it was really cool because Majakowski was our CO when we deployed. So
Okay, right on.
yeah, so
nice
that
to see a
worked out.
familiar face.
Yeah, it worked out really good. Olstad was the first sergeant major that I met when I got to battalion. I think he was sergeant major of Dukes at the time.
Okay,
maybe,
right on.
I don't remember though.
And he is currently the 4-div sergeant major, I think? Or was?
Yeah, he was there. I
He
don't think there
was.
anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
So, or maybe he is. I can't remember. I think Majakowski is still the div commander.
Okay,
So yeah, he would be his arson.
right on.
Yeah, and then it was like leadership stuff. Did my ASA while at brigade headquarters, and then after I finished that, obviously got promoted to master corporal. Then had to come back, and there was basically like 2 months after I was back at battalion, I got diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so
What year was this?
this is 2015.
2015.
Yeah, so got diagnosed with cancer. It was stage 3 testicular. So
Is that prostate cancer then?
nope. So testicular is I had a tumor in one of my testicles. Stage 2 is it spreads to a clump of lymph nodes in your sternum near your aorta. I had a golf ball sized tumor there. And then stage 3 is it spreads to your lungs. So I had 4 tumors in my lungs.
Holy shit! So you had all these?
Yeah. And it was really weird because I've been experiencing like these weird pains. And it was like, I was just chalking it up to an infantry. I had like these crazy pains in my stomach and my back, and I had no idea why. And it would just come and go for no reason. Like I could be doing super physically strenuous activities and it would be fine. And then I'd just be sitting on the couch and I'd be in crippling pain for no reason. And yeah, it was actually Deadpool saved my life. So
Deadpool?
Yeah. So when
Whoa, we talking about like Deadpool?
Yeah, like
Marvel?
Deadpool, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So basically, when the first movie was coming out, it was he was doing those like public service announcements, all like the little videos.
Yeah,
And
the
one of
promotional
them-
stuff.
Yeah, one of them was about testicular cancer, and it was called like Deadpool, like go home and touch yourself tonight. And it was basically him like it was like an instructional video on how to check yourself for testicular
Yo, are
tumors.
you serious, man?
Yeah. And I was at a party and I saw this, somebody was showing it on their phone or whatever, and I'm like watching it and I, go down there and I grab, I'm like, ow, what is that? And then like went to the doctor and they were like, yep, you've got a whatever, can't even remember, germ cell something or other.
But like a red flag came.
Yeah. So I went to the doctor and they called me and told me that they were like 99% sure it was cancer. The thing with testicular cancer is they can't biopsy it.
What's that mean?
So that usually if they want to determine if it is or not cancer, they'll do a biopsy. It's like it's this huge needle that goes in, grabs a bunch of cells and pulls it out. But the thing with the type of tumor that testicular cancer is that it's super, super fast spreading if it gets disrupted, right? So the germ cells that the tumor is made out of, if you were to biopsy it and not capture all of the cells, it can go to your bloodstream and turn into leukemia, which is not good.
No.
That's actually what testicular cancer turns into at stage
Leukemia?
4. It turns into leukemia. It spreads to your blood. Because there is no terminal testicular cancer, so it goes from testicular to leukemia, and then leukemia can become terminal. So it was like, once they were like pretty confident that it was a tumor, They don't biopsy it, so they surgically remove the testicle to get rid of the tumor, because that's the only way to ensure that they get it all out without disrupting it and spreading it needlessly, right? So I had surgery November 2nd, 2015. I think it was November 2nd. I'd have to check my calendar. Whatever it was, Monday, the 2nd or the 3rd of November. I was in the hospital for 8 days. It's a pretty invasive surgery. I got a pretty gnarly scar in my stomach from it. It's like 12 inches long, because they have to take like everything that's attached to it. So they go all the way up into your stomach to get all the bits that are connected. So I was in the hospital, got a pretty bad infection. So I was in the hospital for like 8 days. And
after the surgery, you got infection?
After the surgery. Shit. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
What was going through your, what was going through your head during all this, man?
Well, obviously cancer is a pretty terrible thing to get told you have, right? And my family's got a pretty nasty history of it. Like, I just had another one of my aunts die from cancer, and then a couple years previous to that, when I was in battle school, one of my aunts died from cancer. Sorry. My mother's had cancer. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty prevalent in my family, so it's kind of scary. But I'm a pretty positive guy, and I'm more proactive than reactive. I like taking control of things. I don't like things being out of control. So I was pretty proactive with my care. I didn't care about sharing information with people. I wanted people to know what was going on. I researched stuff. Not that it would make any difference, but I just like to know what was happening, right? And everything that I read was like, there's like an 85% cure rate just with surgery, but that's only for stage 1. But because I had stage 3, it required me to have chemo as well. So I had the first surgery, and then I had 4 months of chemo. And that was the worst. That was by far the worst. But even still, remain super positive. Once you get cancer in the military, it's kind of like everything kind of stops. You go on you're not on permanent or temporary category. You go on the Surgeon General puts you on a special category. It's basically like you're untouchable. Nobody's allowed. You're outside of the chain of command now. You just go and you do your own thing.
So you no longer worked here at 1RCR?
No. So 1RCR again did me a super solid. They kept me here. They kept me on the books basically, because normally when you get cancer, you get sent right to JPSU. I stayed here. I don't know what position they had me in, but I definitely wasn't doing it. And they did a lot of good stuff for me. Like at the time, my warrant was Warrant Anthony Jones, another very prominent figure in the battalion at the time. One of my mentors, I would like to say, a guy that I like to emulate. He ended up, I'm not sure if he did it or if it was the battalion that did it, but I guess they did a fundraiser for me, and the NCOs donated money, and then the officers matched it or doubled it or whatever. And then Anthony shows up to my house I think just as Christmas leave had started. I think it was the 17th of December, and he shows up at my house, and he's telling me that I'm going to be taken care of, whatever I need, and then he hands me this envelope, and it's filled with I think it was $1,900 in cash, and he's like, "This is from everybody." He's like, "Because we want you guys to not have just this in your lives over Christmas and stuff like that. So if you want to pay to have somebody come clean your house to give your wife a break, or buy the kids extra Christmas presents, or take them to Ottawa for whatever, I couldn't do it, but it was to enable my wife to, or if you need to pay to have not that we needed to worry about shoveling our driveway, because I'm pretty sure they sent somebody to shovel my driveway every day. I got a funny story about that too. These privates show up, and my neighbor's snow blowing our driveway, and they asked him to stop because the sergeant major would yell at them if they didn't shovel my driveway for them.
That's hilarious.
I was and I can hear this in the out the window, right? And I'm just oh my god.
Can you please stop using the snowblower, sir?
Yeah, we need to shovel this or he'll be mad at us.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's the mentality of the army. Though.
You gotta love it sometimes,
it was
you know?
great. It was good though. So like again, they took super good care of me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I didn't go to one chemo appointment without somebody being there. Like Eric Leclerc came and sat with me, Steph Tremblay, Donnie Simpson, Greg Bird, Landon Kippen, like tons of dudes came and sat with me, and it was like 5 hours a day that I had to go for chemo.
Were all these dudes like served with you overseas as well?
Yeah, every single one of them. Yeah.
It's like
except Greg Bird. Greg Bird was just, we worked in CQ together. We had just been, kind of hit it off, and he's, he kind of took it upon himself to be the guy that kind of helped me with everything. I don't know if he was voluntold or volunteered. I feel like he volunteered. And he would pick me up every day, like take me to my chemo, anything I needed, like would help my wife with anything she needed. And he did that out of the kindness of his heart. I don't think he was told to do it. I'm pretty sure he wasn't told to do it. We never really talked about it because it's not really something you talk about. But yeah, man, he was there for me literally every single day of my cancer treatment. I ended up having to go to Ottawa for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, Boxing Day and the day after for treatment because they closed the place in Pembroke. And Anthony Jones came and visited me. Sergeant Jordash Young came and visited me. Warrant, I think he's a warrant now. Boswell came and visited me in Ottawa, like on Christmas. I think it was Boxing Day. Took time out of spending time with their family just to come and see me, and I'm just like in my chair, like dying. I probably wasn't a great conversationalist, but they just came and sat with me. That's what you do, right? No words need to be spoken. They just need, they were just there in case.
That's some real brotherhood.
Yeah, of course it is. That's the stuff that this is all about, right? Yeah, and then, made it through, saw the light of the tunnel, finished chemo, rang that bell, everybody cheered. Had my follow-up appointments. The oncologist that I'm seeing in Ottawa is like, yep, all your scans are good. The tumors so it was like a 7 millimeter tumor in my sternum, was shrunk down to under a millimeter. So that's where they draw the line. If it had been bigger than a millimeter, they would have gone in and tried to surgically remove. Well, there was two options. Like do another round of chemo, another 4 months of chemo, or they just go in and they try to surgically remove as much of the rest as they can. But because it's right on your aorta, they don't want to do that because it's like a main vein, right? And then the tumors in my lungs were non-distinguishable. So they call that success. As long as my cancer markers don't go up, they consider it remission, right? So they don't call it remission anymore until after 5 years. So I'm in year 4 now, technically. Completed 4 years, so I guess technically 5th year. But yeah, so now it's basically all good to go now.
Right on, you beat it.
I did, yeah. So, warrior spirit.
Hell yeah.
Intestinal fortitude.
How did that feel?
Amazing. Like it was a big eye opener to me though. Like I was never really that guy that put in the maximum effort to my downfall. Like I didn't care enough to care really, right? Like I was not bad at my job. I was always good at my job. I was always professional, but I never strived to be the best, right? And the cancer kind of changed my perspective on life a little bit. I felt kind of like I had been given a second chance, even though it wasn't realistically, was I ever in chance of dying? Probably not, but you never know, right? Like cancer's still cancer, it can kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it sometimes. So it kind of changed my perspective a little bit, and I felt kind of like I had been squandering the life that I had been given. So I changed a lot of things. So I started working out really hard, taking care of my body, taking care of the food that I eat, what's going into my body. I'm not really a spiritual guy, but I I do take care of my mental health. Maybe not in that way, but other ways. And I decided that I wanted to be better than I was, right? And everybody that was in the Afghanistan era, we're all pretty much say the same thing, right? Like it's not, the infantry isn't like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the next best thing for me would be like CANSOFCOM. So that was kind of my plan. Was I just wanted to see if I could be that. And I think that realistically every infantryman should strive for that, is because that's the pinnacle of our trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that necessarily they're way better than us, but they're more focused. They're a higher tier, obviously, right? And if not them, JTF2. And I think that every infantryman should at least see if they have what it takes, because that's the pinnacle of our trade, right?
Or the entire military in general, because every trade has like a job over there essentially.
Yeah, but their jobs don't really differ so much, right? Like if you go over there as a clerk, you're still just being a clerk, but you're being a clerk for them. But for us, it's you're going from generalized infantry training to specialized infantry training, if you want to call it that. More focused, right? And I think that everybody should try. But that could just be the new perspective that I have now, right? And I don't fault anybody for not doing it, obviously, because everybody has their own thing in life. But for me, that's what I chose to do. So I ended up coming back to work. So after you're done chemo, I was still given like 6 months of medical leave to just kind of like bounce back, because even though you're done chemo, the side effects still can last for years afterwards.
Like what are some of these side effects?
So what I had one that was pretty bad. It was called mitochondrial reconditioning. It's basically the cells in your body, instead of like absorbing energy and then using it to multiply and produce new cells, hold on to it and store that energy, because they're anticipating massive trauma to the body, because that's what chemo was doing. It was traumatizing my body and killing all the fast-growing cells in my body. So the cells that could get energy would hold on to it to try and stay alive rather than dying. And what that did was, it would be no rhyme or reason, but like I would just get exhausted and then have to sleep. It could happen anytime, anywhere, any place.
Like
yep,
that?
just like bam, like I'm done, I need to go lie down, and then I would just go and sleep for like 18 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like sometimes days. Like I would just be in bed for days. And there was nothing that you can do about it. There's no, and it could be a lifelong side effect. It can never go away. But the doctors that I talk to about it, because I go for checkups weekly afterwards, and then the checkups start spacing out the further you get away from finishing chemo. They were like, yep, this is a normal side effect. Typically, it goes away on its own, but sometimes it can be permanent. There were other things too, like your nerves would get all messed up. So like if I pinched my fingers together, I wouldn't feel the pressure on the inside of my fingers. It would feel like somebody was pushing on the outside of my fingers.
Whoa.
So it would be like these really weird neurological side effects. Obviously, I lost all my hair. I lost my sense of taste. It came back. It all come back. My hair kind of came back. I'm super sparse now. I used to have like super thick hair.
Oh, did you have flow?
Yeah, well, not flow, but it was thick.
Yeah.
I looked like a mad scientist. But yeah, and my beard was like actually black like yours, and now it's gray. Lost all the pigment in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And but yeah, so some stuff stays, some stuff doesn't. And my solution to that was PT. I would just PT the side effects away. The doctors didn't suggest that, but that's what I did. And every day that I went and did PT, I felt better. Even though I don't know if it was mental or like a placebo. I don't know like if it was actually making me feel better, but because I had put so much faith in the fact that if I was being physically active, I would be able to be physically active for longer, and then I would sort this cell thing out and be good to go. so I ended up coming back to work like 6 months early so I could do this reconditioning stuff with PSP. And I just did that, and I crushed PT as much as I could, because even still, like, sometimes I would start, and then I would just be exhausted instantly and have to like go home and sleep, or I would be good to go for the whole session, and that'd be good to go, right? Because I lost with chemo, I lost 52 pounds, so I was 122 pounds.
Whoa.
At 6 feet tall. I looked like a skeleton with skin on it, and then I gained it all back laying in bed eating food, because like I was on so much medication for nausea and stuff like that, and it's not the same nausea stuff that you get like over the counter, right? So they gave us stuff that tricks your stomach into thinking that it's empty so that it doesn't feel nauseous, but the side effect of that is being hungry all the time. So I lost all that weight, then they changed my medication, and then I just ate like extra large pizzas. No, I'm just kidding, it wasn't extra large, but I was just eating all the time because I always felt hungry. So I gained it all back, but it was like a bag of milk. It was just gross.
Man, your body was going all over.
Oh yeah, it was all over the place. And I'm like, no, I need to not be like this. And that's the PT. And then the more PT I did, the better I felt. And then work was cool with me coming back to work on like my own terms. So I came back and I did a bunch of like administrative stuff for EFP10 for Latvia, I think. And just helped wherever I could. But the DSM at the time was cool with me just coming and going as I pleased, because technically I was still on medical leave if I wanted to be, right? But I didn't. I wanted to be a part of the team again, because that's what this place is about, being a part of the team. And I needed to be here because I was going crazy at home. I needed to feel like I was contributing. So yeah, I would come, do as much as I could until I couldn't anymore, and then go home. And that lasted for a while, and then eventually I just came back full time and was good to go. And then went, the Kent software, trying for it, and then other stuff happened with that, but you know.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right on. So like, purpose played a huge role in your recovery?
Yeah. Well, like, everything. If you have purpose, it can drive you to do things that you don't even think that you're capable of, right? But it's like you have to give that to yourself. Like nobody can give you purpose.
What does that mean to you?
It's, you know, for me, purpose is either being better myself or making what I can influence better, right? That's what gives me purpose. I want to be the best that I can be now. I want to learn something new every day. I don't want to squander the time that I'm given. You know, professionally, I want to be the best that I can be now. I taught on a course last summer, just a BMQ LAN, like I guess the equivalent of like our SQ, so it's like their weapons training, basic soldier skills, and they would tell me about their aspirations, like my section. Right? I was working as a section commander, and they would tell me about their aspirations, and be like, well, how do I get that? And my answer to them was always the same. I'm like, don't give anybody any excuse not to pick you. That's how you get what you want. Mm-hmm. Be the best that you can be. Do if you need, whatever you're trying to accomplish, be the best. Be the most proficient, be, you know, the most knowledgeable, be the most professional, be whatever it is.
And whatever it
be
takes.
The best. Don't give anybody an excuse not to pick you. So if you want a position, do everything in your power to be the best at that. And don't give anybody an excuse. That's purpose, right? Like if you want something, nobody's going to give it to you. You have to earn it. And you earn that through hard work and dedication and, you know, mastery of a profession or whatever it is that you're striving to, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what really changed with me is like that. Like, I didn't really feel like I had purpose. Well, after the Afghanistan stuff, you didn't really feel like you had purpose. You were just kind of going through the motions here, and then that cancer thing changed that for me completely. So now it's like laser beam focus. You know, I know what I want, and I'm gonna do whatever I can in my power to get it. Obviously, there's certain things that are out of your control, but you know, whatever you can influence, do it.
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Like. That's powerful, man. Like, just sitting with a guy like you right now, I just feel this kind of aroma of like this kind of energy, and like I don't want to sound weird and shit saying this stuff, but like, man, that I guess that near death experience with yourself really invigorated that new perspective, new attitude of life, man.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to chase that myself. Like I've been trying to do my own self improvement, but like, you know, hearing a guy like you, I don't know if I need to have to go through cancer, for example. Like I just gotta believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta have that faith in that perspective and that attitude to be the best.
100%.
And people do it.
They do. You see it all the time. There's guys that will always, you know, perform for you, and they're the guys that have that attitude. They're like, I'm here for a reason, and that reason is to be the best. Like I'm gonna be the guy that, you know, gets up that hill the fastest, or you know, gets perfect on every test, or you know, whatever it is. Like it's, you know, if you put the effort in, you can get whatever you want. You just have to put the effort in, and that's the purpose, right? Like that's. You have to have goals for yourself. You have to. Like if you don't have goals, like what are you even doing? You might as well just go and sit at home.
Like going through the motions.
Yeah, like that's not a life. Like life is to be lived. And that's the other thing, right? Like you said, the near death experience. And it's not necessarily even the near death experience. It's the fact that there was nothing that I could really do about it other than because I had a choice, right? You could either be negative about it and be like, fuck, I have cancer, I'm gonna die maybe. Or you could be positive about it and be like, fuck, I've got cancer and I'm going to kick its ass and this is just going to be a thing. And that was the choices, right? Because really, realistically, there's nothing that you can do about it. Like it's because you're going to go and you're going to get treatment and it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And I think that was like, because that was my attitude, I chose to be I'm going to kick its ass. And that's what I just stuck with to the entire time. You know, and it's having that positive attitude too that really helps with you know, goal setting and getting what you want in life, you know, and here that's a huge thing. Mm-hmm. If you want to be proactive and you want to get what you want, you can do it. You know, there are things that you can do, but it's up to you.
100%.
Yeah. Nobody's gonna do it for you.
Man, that's I don't even know what to say, man. That's amazing.
Well, you've heard a lot of it too, right? Because we did a lot of the same training that you're going through right now. So, yeah, like you're your own worst enemy.
Yes,
you know,
100%.
You're your own worst enemy. If you want to be motivated, nobody's going to motivate. Like, well, people can help motivate you, but at the end of the day, you've got to want it hard enough to do what it takes. That's it.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So we kind of covered that aspect, like mindset is important.
Yeah.
You know? And like, I don't even know if there's anything more to say about it. Like, that's amazing. I want to keep the conversation going here because like we kind of talked about a little bit about mentorship.
Yeah.
And I would like to take the conversation there. And you mentioned like Sergeant Major Leclerc, you mentioned Master Warrant Officer Jones.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what mentorship means to you then?
So mentorship I think it's one of the most important facets of this occupation. Like we're an experience-based organization, I think, right? Like you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have the experience in the stuff that we do, it's going to go to waste, right? Mm-hmm. And that experience gets passed down from generation to generation to generation. So even though you might not have fought in Korea, you know, somebody did, and then they taught somebody, and then that person taught somebody, and then that person taught Warrant and Claire, and then Warrant and Claire taught us, right? So it might not be the same exactly as it was taught at first, but the spirit of that knowledge has been passed down through mentorship. And, you know, you get the bits and pieces of it that are relevant to the time that we're in. And obviously some of it can't be passed down for like legal reasons anymore. But, you know, like it's people a lot of times now I think are too quick to kind of like write people off. And I think that if you were to find out, you know, what drives that person, and maybe specifically, you can bring them back and bring them into that mentorship circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know Donnie was talking about like a section is usually broken up of like 3 guys that are good to go, 5 guys that are okay being there, and then 2 guys that are like your malingerers, right? And through like mentoring at every level, right? So like it starts all the way at the top, and that's where it needs to start, right? Because like the warrant mentors, the sergeant's mentor, the master corporal's mentor, and even the corporal's mentor, right? Down all the way to the privates.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the privates, based on their experience, can mentor each other.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be, like, mentor is like a, you know, like you think like it's one person taking one person under their wing, but it's not. It's a collective thing. And I like more the like dissemination of information, right? Maybe not necessarily mentoring, but, you know, sharing experiences, having conversations, having discussions. You know, there's a time and a place, obviously. Like sometimes it's, you got to just do things the way that you've been told to do them.
Right.
But, you know, like most of the time now, we're not in a situation where that really has to happen. And, you know, there can always be better ways to do things. And so I think mentorship doesn't necessarily even go down. It can go up too.
Mm-hmm.
Just because somebody's a private doesn't mean that they're stupid and they don't know anything.
Right.
Right? Like you have, unless you've taken the time to really get to know that guy, like you have no idea what they did before they got into the military, right? So, and you see sometimes there's older people that join, you know, like myself, like I wasn't necessarily old, but I was older. And I had a little bit more life experience than a lot of people that I came up with. And like, that doesn't mean, just because I'm a private doesn't mean that life experience doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
You know, like there was, like I was the internet guy in Afghanistan. We had a satellite internet box that nobody had a fucking clue how to use. And I did all that stuff before I joined the military, so I know how to use it.
Right on.
So I made internet happen all the time. It was a curse and a blessing. Because you get woken up in like the middle of the night, like, Austin, I did video chat. Make it work.
A victim of your own success at that point, yeah.
Yeah, but it also let me commandeer the internet every Sunday and download all the like new Sons of Anarchy and not Rick and Morty, Archer, and you know, I'd have a list of movies that people could ask for. You know, and that's what I mean. Like, but that's something that I could have taught someone. You know what I mean? I could have shown. I didn't, because I was. You know, I liked being the only guy that could do it. It made me useful.
You're a resource.
It made me useful. I got ad rep by our OC in Afghanistan to fix his internet. The SIGs were stealing it.
Wow.
Yeah, they cut everybody out.
Wow.
Yeah, they limited their bandwidth and took it all for themselves. They could like watch Netflix in their beds.
Of course, the C's.
Yeah. Yeah, I shut that down. Anyways, yeah. So, but there's experience can go both ways, and mentorship can go both ways, I think. And you know, like learning from each other is super important, and you know, taking other people's perspectives is super important. And you don't want anybody to ever feel like they're, you know, what they kind of try to contribute isn't important, right? Like maybe it's not the best idea, but like they're still trying to contribute. They're still trying to be a part of the team, and that helps build all that camaraderie and the bonds and everything too, right? Is, you know, letting somebody, if they want to, be a part of the team too. Yeah, mentorship is huge. And you know, the two that I made reference to, Eric Leclerc and Anthony Jones, they're like polar opposites of each other.
Really?
Yeah. So Eric is the like, not that Anthony's not super switched on and all that stuff, but it was just their mentoring techniques were polar opposites, where Eric was like the super hard charging, like, you know, very demanding for a reason, and in the moment you hated him for it, you know, explicitly hated him for it, but as the years go by, you look back and you're like, I get it. I 100% get it. And where Anthony was like, he was very compassionate and understanding, and he always looked at stuff from your point of view, and I think that there's a time and a place for both, and a mix of both kind of techniques of mentoring people is a good place to be. And that's kind of like where I like to sit, is in the middle. I like, you know, like I'll be hard when I need to be, but I would rather understand somebody first, maybe before,
Writing
launching
them off.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, in my experience, is that nobody deserves to be written off. And 9 times out of 10, if you're a leader and you take leadership responsibility like seriously, if somebody's being written off, that's your fault, not their fault. That is a failure of the leader, not of the follower.
I believe that too.
And obviously some people are their own worst enemies. But like, there's always something more you can do. And I know the Army, we have a lot of like no tolerance policies now for stuff. But, unless you understand why somebody is doing things the way that they're doing, you can't really help them. Right. So
100%.
I think that you need to be able to, like, principle of leadership, right? Like, know your subordinates and support their welfare. So you have to know your guys, and if you don't, you can't help them. So like, rather than write them off, get to know them.
So for myself, and I love that you say that, because like I think the best term to explain that would be like holistically looking at them, because I came from a social work background, and on our background, like for example, if you're trying to help your client, for example, and let's just say they had a drug issue, right? Now we can look at that person and be like, he has a drug issue, or we can look at that person and be like, okay, he's using drugs to cope with with something else. There's something else going on, not just the drugs. And when you start looking at maybe examining that person's life, you'll start seeing a connection to a whole bunch of other issues that exist. And it could be everything from mental health issues to financial issues to family problems. And it could be like whatever. It could be a mix of everything.
Oh, yeah, you have no idea.
You have no idea. But if you only look at it superficially, then it's easy to label someone and be like, okay, write them off. Like, no time for that. Make them someone else's problem,
Which isn't the solution.
No. And when you talk about mentorship, like, I think how you're explaining it, like, kind of gives me an idea. Like, it should be more community driven in that sense, because you see you have these polar opposites of leaders, but they're both effective and they both get it done, just their own style of it. And like, growing up, like coming through the military, I've been there for like 10 and a half years now. I've seen a lot of different kinds of leaders out there, and even those extreme polar opposites, the extreme ends, you still need like one guy at the extreme end.
Oh, you do.
You learn a lot from that. You might not learn everything from that person, but you'll learn a lot.
And even poor leaders, like people that are terrible leaders and have no business being in leadership positions, and we all know that happens. You can learn from them too, because
100%.
Like, learning what not to do is also beneficial.
100%.
Because everybody had that instructor coming up that's like, that guy's a dick. I am never going to be like that. That is terrible. That is ineffective. Why is he like that?
Right.
And everybody had that guy. And I hope that people nowadays will be like, when I get to that point, I'm not going to be like that. Because we all saw that too. Like, you'd be on course, like, well, on my course, I got torqued like this, so now I'm going to torque you like this. But in the moment, were you thinking that, or were you thinking that guy's a dick and he shouldn't be doing that? And now you're like, yeah, it's my turn to be a dick. Not really a great thing to do. There's a time and place for hardship, obviously.
Of course.
But it's got to be effective, and it's got to have a reason. Because if there's no reason for it, then you're just, like I said, you're just a dick.
100%.
There's no purpose for that. At the end of the day, you're still a team. Like, the guy's just on a course. Being a dick and adding stress are different things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And once he's done that course, like, maybe at some point you're going to be peers. And in some cases, maybe he's going to be your boss.
Oh, yeah.
Because that happens too, right? That guy that's, maybe a poor leader doesn't go up as fast. And this guy that, has it dialed in starts progressing through the ranks quickly. And then all of a sudden, that guy that you torqued for no reason because you just felt like being a dink is now in charge of you.
Oh, yeah. I've heard some stories, man. And like, it's funny how the tables can turn, that.
It's like, being effective is always better than being right. And that's a big, I got told that by a very smart woman when I was younger. Is it better to be right, or is it better to be effective? Because you always know that guy that's always like, listen to me, I'm always right. And he might be always right, but you don't have to like belittle other people or like make it your business to make sure that everybody knows that you're always right. You know, is it better to be right or is it better to be effective?
100%. I think that kind of sometimes it ties into like ego, you know?
Yeah. Well, we're all egomaniacs.
We are. Some of us just more aware of it than others, or have a better leash on it.
Yeah.
You know, we're still people at the end of the day, and we still mess up.
And we're still one team, right?
Yeah.
We're still, you know, once that guy's off course, he's gonna be in your section or part of your team or whatever. You know what I mean? You gotta work together.
Yeah, how you feeling right now? You good?
I'm good, man.
You gotta take a piss break?
No, I'm good.
Oh, right on. Yo, where are we at for time, man?
150.
150, man.
We can talk forever.
Yo, we could. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, let's do it. So we kind of talked about mentorship and how that kind of feeds into like leadership.
Yeah.
Would you have any kind of particular advice you'd want to give to like one of your guys who'd want to identify like, hey, Sergeant, I want to go on PLQ one day, or I want to be a Master Corporal one day? What kind of advice would you want to give to maybe somebody like that identifies?
So, like, they don't call it the burden of leadership for no reason, right? Like, anybody can be in charge, right? Anybody can, you know, we call it louder ship noises instead of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody can do that. Anybody can yell. Anybody can, but you know, to be like an actual effective leader, like you need to understand what you're doing. And in a lot of aspects, like our training for leadership is really good. In some cases, it's really bad. And we focus on some of the wrong things sometimes. Leadership, it needs to be like, you have to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just let your guys exist. Like, you have to interact with them. You have to be a part of their lives. You have to know them. You have to suffer with them. You have, you know, like, I haven't been a sergeant for a very long time. I only got promoted in December, but you know, so I'm still in that mindset of, you know, when there's a task to be done, I'm still in there like digging the trench, or, and, you know, I don't see any problem with that though. And some people do. Some people are like, well, you know, listen, like, you're a sergeant now, you got to take a step back. But I don't want to take a step back. Like, I want to still be in there. I want to be with the boys. I want to suffer with them. I want to, you know, help them. I want to be a part of that. And that's, you know, and I think that's the best way to get respect, like, as a leader too, is like, you show that you're still the same. Like, there's no difference between us really, right? So you're private, corporal, mess corporal, sergeant, warrant. The only difference is time, like, and in some cases experience. But even realistically now, like, you have sergeants now that have never been overseas, right? So what's the difference between that sergeant and a private that's just getting in now, other than a little bit of training, realistically, right? Mm-hmm. They have no tours. They have no, like, mission-specific training. So the only thing they have really different is, like, maybe a PLQ or an IJLC or an ISCC or whatever they're calling it now, and then time, and that's it. So like, I don't see why we can't, you know, be more involved. And there's a lot of problems now with retention and manning and stuff like that, and we don't get to really maybe get involved as much as we want to, or some of us want to, I should say, because not everybody has the same mindset as I do. Not that it's wrong or right. This is my mindset.
Right.
So like, if somebody was coming up, I would say, if you want to be a leader, you have to know your guys. You have to be a part of their lives, right? Like, you have to know what motivates them. You have to know what drives them. You have to know maybe their you definitely have to know their shortcomings. Maybe if they have problems, you have to know them, and you have to be willing to help. That's the big thing too, right? You have to have a commitment to them, because you're demanding a commitment from them, right? So I think that's a big thing, is you got to be committed. You got to be just as committed to them as you're demanding the commitment from them.
100%. What kind of stuff, like, what do you think makes a good follower?
So the military is funny in the way that it's, a lot of the times we say we want, like, critical thinkers and all that stuff, and I agree with that. But there's the other mindset that's like, well, sometimes you just gotta do what you're told. But I also agree with that. So a good follower is the person that knows the time and the place. So sometimes you're just going to be told to do this, and it might not be the right time to be like, well, why do we have to do that? You know, and ask all these questions and stuff like that. I get it. You know, I like to know why I'm doing things as well, but there's a time and a place sometimes. So I think a good follower knows the difference of when and where to be the why guy and when and where to be the yes sergeant guy or yes warrant or yes sir guy. And to also like spread that, right? So like Warren Simpson was saying, there's the three guys that, you know, display the leadership qualities that always are kind of like taking control of the rest of your section. Maybe there's the 5 guys that are confident in just being told what to do, and then there's the 2 guys that are kind of
not performing.
They don't really give a shit, and they're just there to collect the green welfare. But the good followers are those guys that can listen and also motivate those 2 other guys. That's a big thing that makes a great follower. But also a guy that wants to be more, like isn't just content being a follower. So you always want to be better, right? So, you know, they can, you know, when training allows or whatever, maybe give them more responsibility and stuff like that to develop them. And that's where you get into like the mentorship and stuff like that.
And as a mentor, as a leader, sometimes you got to give your people an opportunity.
Yeah.
Or create an opportunity if you can.
Yeah. And we're kind of bad for that too, is we will give people opportunity in training. And then when they fail, we, for some reason, like chastise them. I don't understand that. You're trying to see if this guy's got potential, even though he's not, you know, trained in that. Maybe he, you know, you give him some, you know, tidbits of how to do whatever you're asking him to do, and then you send him on his way. And then when he comes back and he didn't do it right, you're like, well, you didn't do it right. Well, that wasn't necessarily the point of that exercise. The point of the exercise was to see what he could come up with without actually knowing what he was doing. You know what I mean? Like, and we're kind of bad for that. So we want everybody to try, but then we always are kind of critical of failure when we shouldn't be. We should be more like encouraging, like, because you want them to make the mistakes, because you learn more from a mistake than from succeeding.
Right.
Realistically. Because if you succeed, you didn't really learn anything. You already knew what you were doing. But if you fail, you can learn from that. Hopefully you learn from that.
But if the attitude there is like, we're always going to ridicule people,
and
then everybody's scared to take chances, like, you'll never go bold. And like, you know, there's that saying, fortune favors the bold, but like,
it's true.
if you kind of tie their hands or tie their feet, like psychologically speaking, I mean, you're not going to really encourage any kind of crazy can-do attitudes out of that.
And we want that, right? We want people to step up. We want people to be like, hey, can I lead this section attack? Not a live fire one, obviously, but hey, can I? And we used to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And actually, Eric Leclerc was phenomenal for that. He would let dudes, like, he let me and Landon Kippen take a lab out in Cobden on the economy exercise, and Landon got to be the section commander, and I was the 2IC. Obviously, we weren't commanding the lab because none of us had the qualification at the time, but we got to be the section commanders, go and take a section out and do a patrol. But like, he didn't expect us to give him like orders because we weren't trained in that. But he did expect us to give him a plan and be able to articulate that plan, and, you know, answer questions that he had, like, on the plan. Not necessarily in like the proper format, but, you know, you had to know you had to be able to understand what you were trying to achieve,
right?
Based on the aim that he was giving you,
without the formal training, but understanding the expectations.
Exactly. And then we did a good enough job, so we were allowed to take out a patrol, like
right on.
$6 million vehicle by ourselves, you know, 2 corporals.
And for the leadership, I mean, that puts yourself in a bit of a position of risk because, you know, things could, in theory, go bad. And if they do, it's back on you and even maybe your bosses. But at the same time, if you don't maybe sometimes take those risks, maybe you don't give your people the best opportunities to grow.
No, and that's where you get your job satisfaction as well, right?
Yeah.
So, like a lot of people will say that, you know, they're bored and stuff. Like we just sit down and look at lockers and stuff like that. Well, yeah, we want to be challenged too, right? You know, they want to be challenged. We want to be challenged because that's where you get the growth from, right? Is from the challenge. And yeah, you know, 9 times out of 10, you might fail or succeed, but you know, that's how you learn, and that's how you grow, and that's how you become better. That's a big thing. 100%. And I don't think we do enough of that anymore. But that comes down to like our tempo and our manning and stuff like that. I think that's like one of the worst problems right now. It's just because of manning. We don't get to be with the same people for long periods of time. We don't get to know guys, you know, intimately enough.
Right.
We don't get to, you know, do maybe lower level training. It's always like the same big major exercises, you know, because budgets are cut, resources are cut, stuff like that. And there's no time, you know, or there's no leadership. So, because, you know, somebody always has to be in charge, but necessarily like, you know, just to oversee, and then you can let, you know, your subordinates actually be in charge, you know, with oversight from you. But we can't do that anymore because a lot of the guys that would be providing the oversight are tasked to leadership or tasked to the schools or, you know, so many tasks.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just, you know, the ebb and flow of the military.
It's nature of the beast, right? We got to keep feeding these tasks because these other tasks are important too to the army.
Yeah, they are.
But yeah, it's just it's tough on the guys because like then you take away the leadership, takes away the mentors.
Yep.
And sometimes those people are critical at facilitating good training.
Yep.
Right?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Carrying the conversation forward, we covered a lot of stuff, man.
That's all right.
Let's talk about some culture here.
Okay.
Right? We kind of touched base about it a little bit because you said that you noticed a difference between the culture before during wartime and what it's kind of turning into now or what it is now. So what is your take on unit culture and what does that mean to you?
So unit culture, I guess we went kind of like from being super focused with like Afghanistan and stuff like that to more of like, I know I hate the term back to the basics because basics are, nothing we do is basic, right? If it was basic, anybody could do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like more of like fundamentals. We go back to the fundamentals.
I like that.
So that's what we focus on now because we're preparing for an inevitable eventuality of another conflict because it will eventually happen, right? Be it today, tomorrow, 10 months from now, 10 years from now, you know, eventually it will happen.
It's the nature of mankind.
Yep. You know, greed, money, power. So yeah, so it's gone from like this super hyper focused training on, you know, asymmetrical warfare to a more broad spectrum of warfare, right? And a culture is good. Like we need to be proficient in everything. I think Warren Simpson mentioned it too. Like when we were doing Afghanistan, we forgot how to use stoves, and now we go to the winter and we freeze to death. You know what I mean? Even though it's winter like 13 out of the 12 months of the year in Petawawa. And so like we can't really lose that stuff, right? So in the meantime, we got to go back, you know, refocus on fundamentals, and go from there. The problem with that though is that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's I want to use the term stagnant, but that's not really what it is. But it doesn't get, like, nobody really has a end state, right? These training missions like Latvia and Ukraine and Iraq and stuff come up every once in a while, but even then, like, they're cut down to such small numbers now that, like, you may or may not go, right? And you would think that would, like I said before, you have to make sure that you don't give anybody an excuse not to pick you. Mm-hmm. So you would think that would be the mentality that people have, but they don't. They have the opposite mentality. They're like, well, if I'm not going to get a tour, I'm not going to try. And that's kind of the culture that we've kind of gotten to, and that's not good, I don't think. It should be the opposite, right? It should be like, I'm going to be the best freaking gunner that's ever been a gunner. And they're going to take me on tour because they know that I'm the best, and that's it. And that's the mentality that everybody should have.
Mhm.
That's the way that it should be. Yeah, like but that also again comes to the leadership. So if you have to nip that stuff in the butt and focus your guys, that's your job as a leader, right? You want to make sure that you motivate them and you keep them positive and just as much as they're like morose, like they're not going to take me, I'm not going to try, is infectious and bad. Being like you had Rick Beckford on the show, and he's infectious. His happiness and positivity and being upbeat is infectious.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes both ways. If you can instill that in your guys, that's how it spreads like wildfire, and that's what you want. And but I think a lot of people are they're just tired of the repetitive training cycle and not really getting any intrinsic job satisfaction out of it. And that's it. But it has to happen, right? Like those, there are exercises that have to happen. It's part of the training, like, you know, and unfortunately, people have to motivate themselves too.
100%.
So it's not just leadership's responsibility; it's the individual's responsibility too. So I think that's a big thing too for the culture of this place. Is like you need to motivate. You need to be motivated, and if you're not, I don't know why we don't let people kind of like do the stuff that they want to do. Right? I understand that we have a mandate. We have to have people. But like if somebody's not happy here, you're not getting anything from them anyway. So if he wants to go and do something else for a couple of years, I don't know why we don't maybe, you know, help that guy out with that more often than we do. Yeah, and I think that kind of adds to that people kind of not enjoying it as much as they might be able to. But again, you volunteered to be here. You know, like you chose to come to this profession. You know, it's not like it's hiding what it is. You know, you should make the best of it, and that's on them.
There's no real hidden tricks here, man.
No,
the infantry's been around long enough. A lot of dudes are integrated into civilian world. Like, there's documentaries, there's literature, there's a whole bunch of things out there, man. Like it's you just gotta go if you're really interested. Like, go look at it. Go read people's memoirs of their service, and you'll find it. There's hardships that are just part of the nature of the beast, man.
Well, because we have to be hard.
Yeah.
We have to be. Like there's no easy thing about our actual job. Like we're not handing out socks. We're not turning wrenches. We're pushing bayonets in the flesh potentially. You know what I mean? Like that's not. You're not an easy or soft person isn't going to be able to do something like that. That's why our job is hard. It's hard for a reason. Like
the job description of the infantry, to close with and destroy. I mean, the next line after that is like in any environment, under any conditions, under any circumstances, essentially we will close with and destroy.
Yep.
And like in order to really live by that, like our training needs to reflect that too. Yep. It has to be hard, man. It has to be under those adverse conditions.
But that's where the culture switched, right? So we had the hyper focus of Afghanistan training, and now we've switched to like broad spectrum training. And I think that the people that maybe didn't get to go on tour kind of maybe feel robbed of that. They didn't get the hyper focus training, so now they're in like the perpetual training cycle, and they don't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. But that's not what it's about. Like you're here to hone your skills, and unfortunately our skill set is fleeting. If you don't use it, you lose it. So that's why you do it, and then you get to a certain point, and then you go back, and then you do it again. Because halfway through doing it that time, World War III could break out, and the Russians could be coming up to 17, and now you got to fight. You know what I mean? And if you didn't continue doing that cycle, you wouldn't be ready.
Because in theory, nobody really saw Afghanistan coming, right?
No, nobody did.
That kind of came out of the blue in theory.
Yeah.
And even when the mission transitioned from what it was initially to what, moved to Kandahar and became offensive operations after that, I don't really know how many people really saw that coming, especially in the battalions.
Well, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
Like, That's the nature of the beast.
And look at ISIS, for example, or like whatever the next threat's going to be, right?
Well, yeah, there's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be somebody that wants more that isn't theirs, and they're going to do bad stuff to get it. And it's our job as good people of the world to stop it.
I'm not really worried about the infantry being out of work anytime soon, man.
No, definitely not.
No.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Carrying on.
Yeah, political stuff is bad.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about humility. So,
Okay.
what's humility mean to you?
Yeah, you got to be humble in this job. It's not. I know everybody talks about being like the alpha male and stuff like that, but there's also the quiet professional too, right? You don't have to be the loudest guy in the room. You don't have to be the know-it-all. You don't have to be all of that, even though you might actually be that, right? You're not here to prove anything to anybody, really. Like you are, but you aren't. You don't owe anybody here anything because you volunteered to be here. You've already given more than anybody else, in the country, right? Like you've already signed on that line to give your, like, saying that you will give everything if asked. So I think that the humility in the military is some people are louder than others, and not necessarily for the better. It's the quiet professional that is the dangerous one, right? That's what I think. The guy that sits in the corner and knows what's going on, doesn't have to, be loud or abrasive to show that he's a big, strong man or anything like that. You know that you are. You don't have anything to prove to anybody. It goes back to the same thing that I said before, right? If you are the best, you don't need to make a big show of it. People know that you're the best because you've given them no reason not to think that, right? So yeah, it's professionalism, it's respect, it's all of those things that come together to make a humble person, and I think that's really important here. Is you don't need to be the loud guy to.
Yeah. And like I think the other two too, loud guy, and I call it being a surfer, man. And like what I mean by that, riding the waves of past achievements.
Yeah.
And like honestly though, as much as I could talk shit about this, I have to like own it myself. Like I've been guilty of this myself too. I might have had a crazy achievement in whatever is in the military, outside the military, and like when questioned upon it or not even questioned upon it, I myself have been guilty of like bringing that up.
Yeah.
Now, bringing it up is not necessarily the bad thing. It's like, what am I doing with that information?
Yeah.
And like, if I'm basically reminding that person or informing them of something where I'm basically blowing smoke up my ego,
Yeah.
like I'm doing it wrong, man.
No, man, you're quiet professional. You don't need to be. You don't need to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And like I said, even if you never deployed, you haven't done anything, you've still done more. Like I'm not walking around town telling people to thank me for my service. You know what I mean? Like I'm not ashamed of what I do, but I'm not going around, like it's like those people that are in basic and get their veterans plates. Like you haven't even made it through the training system yet. Or the guys that are on the beach with no shirt on and their dog tags hanging out. Like I think I finished battle school and then my dog tags went into my wallet. And they've been there for like 12 years.
Yeah.
Like it's not that I'm ashamed or that I care if people know. It's that I'm not trying to. That's not all that I'm about, right? Like I'm in the military. Yes, I'm not the military. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm not looking for appreciation. And I think that's the majority of us. I don't think that we're here for the accolades. We're not here for secondary gains. We're not here because we go to a bar and be like, I'm in the infantry, buy me beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh man, Remembrance Day maybe. But, the 12 hours that we get a year to, be veterans.
Speaking of Remembrance Day, what does Remembrance Day mean to you?
Well, you gotta, if you ever want to make it ahead, you gotta know where you came from, right? So we're here because of the sacrifices that the generations previous to us made, right? We live the life that we have because of them, And 100 years from now, they're gonna live the life that they live because of us. And for us to not pay homage to that would be a massive disservice. And it's like I said before too. Any loss of life was a shame, but like these are people that willingly did it. It wasn't like an accident, or it wasn't a fluke. It was they went and gave their lives purposefully because they believed in what they were doing. They believed in good. They believed in all of those things, and were willing to sacrifice their lives for it. And we definitely deserve to, at least give that moment of silence for them. Like, you can't not. It would be a shame not to.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's Remembrance Day. I've grown in appreciation the longer I've been in. The more people like you, for example, that I get to sit down and get to talk to and hear about your experiences makes me even appreciate even more about what I do and how important it is about what we do in general. In the infantry, just being a soldier in general, the concept of that. We can't forget that stuff.
No, not at all.
And like, we have one day a year really where we kind of pay homage to our heritage in that sense, that culture of ours in the military that the whole country kind of does for that one day. But I feel like as a soldier, active duty, we got to remind ourselves more than that, just once a year.
Yeah, 100%. But it's something that is, it's part of our lives forever. And even when you retire, it's still going to be part of your life forever. Like, you were here, you did these things, like you made a commitment to your country, to what's good, like all those values that the military instills into you, like that doesn't go away ever. Once a soldier, always a soldier. There's no going back after you've been in here. Like, you transition into civilian life when you retire, but you never give up being a soldier. You're still gonna always live your life that way, right? You're not gonna change.
Some aspects will resonate with you more than others, maybe, and like everybody's a little bit different. But I think that it is a life-changing experience.
100%.
We talked about like Master Warrant Officer Jones. He has like this kind of he has like this saying that's kind of stuck in the battalion.
I know that, yeah.
Being a good human.
Yeah, be a good human.
So can you tell me about that and what it means to you?
Well, so being a good human to me is like, it's influencing what you can, right? A lot of people think that they can't make a difference. And when you think about a big picture, no, what you do really won't make a difference in the grand whole scheme of things. But you can make small differences. And those small differences can compound and take on a life of their own sometimes. Like by the way that you maybe interact with a person, and then that interaction changes the way that person thinks or sees something, and then they interact with somebody else and change their way, and it is for the better, and it's like a pyramid scheme, but a good one. Right? So you interact with that one, and they interact with two, and then those two interact with two, and it kind of spreads that way, and that's like I remember sitting in the parking lot with somebody at Tim Hortons, and looking out and seeing this garbage laying on the ground, and we had talked about how we didn't know how it got there and stuff like that, and we were like, it was pretty like ignorant of somebody to do that. And we kind of forgot about it, and we were just chatting and stuff like that. And like a little while later, like that guy decides that, you know what, that isn't right, that garbage being there. And he just drives over there and he picks it up and he goes and throws it in the garbage. And it was all just because I said, like, that garbage was on the ground and we should do something about that. I didn't want to do anything about it because I'm super lazy. But, just saying it was like, and made him think about it. And it was you, but I didn't want to say that. But he didn't know what I mean. Like, and then we talked about it afterwards too, right? Like, well, maybe the guy that put it there was still sitting. Maybe that was the guy in the camper that was across the street, and maybe he saw us go and pick that up, and he was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. That was a pretty stupid thing for me to do, and that was pretty ignorant. And then he never does that again. So it's that little thing. Like, and then to go back to Afghanistan. Like, do I think I really made a difference in Afghanistan? Like, in the country as a whole? No, not me personally. But did I make a difference in my area of responsibility? Yeah, I think so. But it's as simple as giving a kid a bottle of water, or like helping dig a well or build a school or, provide security while a medic does first aid on some kids or you know what I mean? Anything. Your little sphere of influence can be very influential if you want it to be. And I think I said it before either too, you care enough to care. And that's what I think a lot of people don't get is the caring enough to care. Just like Anthony says, be a good human. Try to make the world a better place, even if it's holding the door open for an old lady or like anything. You're picking up a piece of garbage or mowing somebody's lawn if they're not able to do it or shoveling somebody's driveway. Anything, man. Like it can be the smallest thing, and you have no idea the kind of impact that can have on somebody. Like even just a kind word or buying somebody their coffee in the drive-thru. It's those little tiny acts of kindness that can be very powerful, and it's things like that here that little interactions with people can be very powerful. It doesn't necessarily need to be kindness, but when it gets to leadership or mentoring or any of those things, just instead of lighting up a dude for being dumb for something, maybe asking him why he did it that way, and then he tells you he's his wife's leaving him and he's not going to get to see his kids again, and and then having that understanding, and maybe he was in a dark place because that was happening, and just because you asked why, you cared enough to care about what was maybe going on in this dude's life. Maybe he, doesn't kill himself or something. You know what I mean? It could be, maybe it gives him hope that, like you say, man, it's not the end of the world. Like, you're still going to get to see your kids, all that stuff. And just those kind, positive words could be enough to change that guy's outlook. And it's just those small acts of kindness can be huge, powerful things.
I think that's true, and I think that's well said.
Yeah.
So, Sergeant Austin, why do you still serve?
Because I'm financially indentured to the military. I have way too many kids, and I can't afford to live. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Because I love it. I love it. I love it every day. It sucks a lot of the time, but I love the suck. You're never gonna find the same people as you do here. You're never gonna build the bonds that you build with here. Nobody stays here for the job. Let's be honest. The job sucks a lot of the time. We stay here for the people. We stay here for our buddies to our left and our right, and we love that. We love the camaraderie. We love the adrenaline rush. We love the action. We love the idea of being a soldier. Everybody wants it, and we all signed up here for that for a reason. We want to do our jobs. We want to protect our country. We want to protect our sovereignty. The world's a pretty crappy place, and it's probably not getting better, and before it gets worse. I think that we owe it to our nation to protect it, right? And that's why a lot of us signed up. So when I was in battle school, I had our course warrant was Sergeant English. And he said, if you're not going to export stability, you're going to import instability. And I believe that, right? So if we're not prepared to go and fight, we're inviting that to come here, right? So our country needs us, right? And I am willing to do that, and I love it. And I want to go, and I want to make the world a better place. And I want to be better at my job, and I want to be, you know what I mean? And this is a great place to do that. And it's a great life. You're never going to get the community like we have here in any other job. You're not going to work at a bank and dive in front of, a bank robber's bullet to save the other cashier, right? Where I would 100% do that for you. And without even thinking about it. And you're never going to get that anywhere else.
I believe that, and coming from the reserve side, having a lot of friends who are still civilians and guys who have left and transitioned out, they say that, you know, no matter what line of work you get into, man, even like law enforcement too, like my buddies tell me, like it's different. The culture is different. Like the mentality and the attitude is just different. Places come kind of close, but it'll never be the same because of the circumstances of what we signed up to do, and to the extent of what that is, and that could be putting your life, like sacrificing your life for the
100%.
cause, man.
Yeah.
And how many jobs require you to put your life on the line for the cause? Not many, man. And to the extent that we do, again, exporting stability and going out to these conflict regions and stuff like that. And there's a lot that goes on with regards to that kind of idea, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot that you know, it's the suffering too is what is a big part of it, right? Like you're never gonna have another job where you're sitting in a mud hole that's slowly filling up with water, and you look to your fire team partner and be like, "This fucking sucks." And he's like, "Yeah, this fucking sucks."
Yeah.
And then you go back to watching your arcs. You know what I mean? Like you're never gonna get that somewhere else, and because of that suffering, you build bonds with people that are in some cases stronger than with your actual family. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get that anywhere else.
And you know what? Even that being said, and I think like man, kind of have to backtrack a little bit because we kind of talked about that issue with when it came to training and like having that high turnover rate with the leadership and stuff like that. So I think that sometimes with certain training experiences, the more time we spend in the field, the more time we spend in these environments, right, under these conditions, you see that in those short periods of time, you can really make up for a lot of camaraderie and team building in those suffering of like that short period of time. Like that one or 2 weeks of a defensive exercise, it can get really shitty, man. And in those times, you have a lot of time to think about yourself, your decisions you made in life, but also get to know the guy next to you in the trench, man.
100%.
And such a deeper level than like you would at garrison 9-to-5 life, man.
Yeah, and we talk about stuff in those situations that you would never talk about to anybody else at any other time. You know what I mean? But what we are bad at though is you can't all be suck though. There's got to be good stuff too.
Right.
And I don't think we do enough good stuff. But that's just because we don't have the time really. Everything is so hectic and crazy with training and taskings and everything like that. I know. Like usually like the COs and the OCs and stuff like that do their best, but it used to be a lot better. Like the big thing for me was like sports Fridays.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people say that, man.
It was half a day. It was half a day out of the work week. Realistically, what are you getting accomplished the second half of a Friday? Nothing.
Just power down mode.
Nobody's doing nothing. You know, so sending the guys to play some ball hockey or volleyball or, you know, whatever, soccer, basketball, you know, it's that stuff that helps too, right? Because it's almost like the reward at the end of the week. Yeah. You know, and there was always those white guys like, oh, why can't we just fucking go home? I just want to go home for the weekend. You know, like, listen, man, like, that's not what it's about. It's about...
And leadership has to sell it. They have to sell that. Yeah, exactly. Like, don't look at it superficially. We ain't just playing sports here, man. Yeah. All right? This is much deeper than that. Yeah. This is camaraderie, man. Yeah. This is team building. This is team spirit, unit pride.
And you get that with competition, too, right?
You get that. This is competitive.
Yeah, you got to make it competitive.
It's much more than just all the things we're talking about. Like, it's much more deeper, and we need as many gung-ho good leaders that can really articulate it and sell it to their guys.
And it doesn't even need to necessarily be like the sports and stuff like that. You can still do it in normal training, right? Yeah. Like you said, like you got to sell it to your guys. You have to be passionate about it and make that passion infectious to your guys, right? Because if they see how much like disgustingly you love it, they will start to disgustingly love it themselves. Sometimes. A lot of the time. And you know what? That's it. You know, you're not going to get 100% success rate. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to come and go. It's the nature of the beast. Not everybody is, you know, built for this life. And it doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't think any less of those people. They still did more than anyone else, you know, that hasn't joined. You know, you still made it. You've made it through basic. You made it through battle school. You made it to a battalion. Yeah, sure. This might not be what you thought it was going to be, and it might not be right for you. I don't disrespect that person. They still have my utmost respect because they still tried. Right? Yeah. They still saw if they had what it took. Maybe they don't, or maybe it's not right for them, and then they go on their way. But you know, like, it's the ones that stay, even though they hate it, because it's a paycheck, that are kind of like, okay, man, like if you don't want to be here, just move along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's, you know, you can only try so much, right? Like you can try and try with people like that, but at the end of the day, like they also have, like we talked before, they have to motivate themselves.
Right.
The positivity comes from inside, not always externally.
And that old saying, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sarge, man, and my final question for the night.
Is that a good one?
I hope so.
Okay.
Do you have any aspirations right now with either your career or your life right now? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, well, so we're ramping up for deployment next year, and so I'm slated for that. So deployment, and then still can't off. So it's still my dream. I still want to see if I have what it takes. Hopefully the things that were stopping me from doing it this year with you, because that was the plan, will not be a thing next year. And that's my game plan still, is to try for that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not getting any old younger, you know what I mean? Ugh.
How old are you right now?
36.
36.
Yeah.
Right on. And still kicking ass.
Still kicking ass. In the best shape of my life. You know, and it's that's my dream, right? Like that's what I want. You know. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next year. From everything I've been told, that tour is a great time to get in shape.
Hey.
They have a good gym over there, apparently.
Right on.
Yeah, so if you don't, you can be an instructor next year and jacking me up.
We'll see how things go, man. We'll see how things go.
Jacking me up, like thundering in.
Well, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch,
No,
but
I have every confidence in you, my friend. Every confidence.
Sergeant Austin, it was honestly like a pleasure, man. Like to have the time to talk to you. Like I'm fortunate I get to hit you up on the off time, get a coffee with you. But this right here, I think you sharing is powerful. Like I believe that there's a lot of people in the unit, that a lot of people that in general that might be listening to this can take something valuable away from this conversation. And honestly, man, I really want to thank you from myself, like Connor, like we're the team here trying to make this happen.
Yeah.
And like if it wasn't for guys like you coming online to share, which takes a lot of courage, you know?
Yeah.
Like, man, I get insecure sometimes doing this stuff. I can only imagine for you
Yeah.
guys. So thank you so much.
Of course, anytime. And you, like, this is amazing. Like you guys have done something really special here. Like I told you earlier, I watched all of the episodes today. I hadn't had time up until today, and I blocked out like half the day to sit there for 8 hours and watch all of them.
Oh man.
But you know what? Like it was worth it. It was worth it a lot. And I learned things about my friends that have had in battalion for years and years and years that I never even knew. From the stuff that they shared with you, that they felt like it was worth sharing to everyone else. And you know what? Like if this even affects one person and just makes them or encourages them to be better or you know whatever inspires them, then it was worth it. You know what I mean? Just one person. You know, like because you never know what they can accomplish. You know, they might go to be the next whatever. You know, next VC. You know, recipient because you inspired them to be the best that they can be. By engaging us, so you never know, man. Like, and this is very powerful stuff, and I wish that somebody had have done this earlier. But I'm glad that you're taking the initiative to
Thank you
to do this stuff, man.
Woo! All right, folks. This is I don't even know what episode this was anymore. This is episode 5, I think so. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to interview the veteran guests, and we're going to have more coming online. We have Sergeant Sloan White coming online, so that should be a good one, too.
That will be a good one.
So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is Project Warrior, Master Corporal Singh, Sergeant Austin, and yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Right on. Awesome. Yo, man, that was a good one, dude. Like, I loved that one.